Mhm.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Friday afternoon here in Canada. It's probably Friday night. Some of you are, maybe Friday morning, and possibly even Saturday morning. It's I've got to cover the whole 24-hour spectrum here, but it's 2:00 on Friday the 13th of November. And yeah, thought we would have a nice live stream this afternoon, start off the weekend on the right foot, get everybody's creative mojo going. And today we are going to spend some time talking about this year's calendar blanket. I am going to start joining all my squares together. So we thought we would take the opportunity to give you guys the floor if you had any questions about this year's blanket or joining the squares or anything like that, to feel free to ask questions if you have any, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. I will be sewing my squares together. Absolutely the most plain Jane version of an attachment method. It's my favorite because it takes up the least amount of yarn. I don't really have to think about it. It's a very small, subtle join, so it doesn't really show. And because I bordered all of my squares in the same color, notably white, when I stitch them all together with white yarn, the stitch of the join pretty much just disappears. So it's not about the joining for me in this blanket. It's more about putting attention on the individual pattern squares that we did. We've got 11 made. We haven't done number 12 yet, obviously, because December hasn't gotten here. But if you wanted to start joining them together, you can totally do that. What I did is I went ahead, I laid them all down in an order that I liked. You don't have to put them in the order that we did them if you don't want. You can shuffle them around. If there was one square that you liked more than a few others, you could add more of that square if you wanted. And you also don't have to do just 12 squares. If you really absolutely adored one of the squares that we did, you could add more of them and have like a blanket of 16 or blanket of 20 even, whatever you want. It is your blanket. We are just all about learning the patchwork patterns this year. And I made 12. I'm going to turn them into a blanket that is 3 across by 4 down. So I laid them all out and I grouped them into sets of 3. And I'm just going to sit here today and sew my sets of 3 together. That will leave me with a set of 2 at the end because December hasn't been made yet. And then I will add December's once we have it, and then I can sew them together lengthwise. Or if you're feeling savvy, you can sew all of them together and then just sew in that last square.
Excuse me.
You need a little sip of something, sweetie.
I'm sipping my coffee, but it's not working.
No, it's jet fuel. That's why you're coughing. Whee!
We are sampling your homemade creamer.
Homemade whitener, coffee whitener.
Homemade coffee whitener.
Yes, it's
very simple.
Very simple. If you're locked down and you don't want to go to the food store and you've run out of milk, we always have some powdered skim milk kind of around. That's something that I grew up always having some of that in the pantry. It's good for baking. That's what I usually use it for. But we made a little coffee whitener. I used a heaping tablespoon of the powdered milk, a level tablespoon of the sugar, of just plain white sugar. Mr. InStitches thinks maybe that was a bit too much sugar, but I think maybe my sweet tooth is operating a little more than yours today because I thought
yours is dialed up a little
bit. And a teaspoon of cocoa powder, and just mixed it all together, and that's it. Add a spoonful of that to the coffee.
It's good. I like it.
Takes the bite off of the coffee.
Mm-hmm.
I've also drunk coffee black in the past. I used to drink it black for years. And then I recently started. I've put everything in it. I've tried all the different nut milks, all the different everything. Yeah. But this is nice. I like it. It's
we have a super chat.
Hey. Thank you.
This is from Black Cat Lover.
Me too. Thank you.
Black Cat Lover says, "Thank you for all you do." Oh, big heart.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for the super chat.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. It definitely helps us out here.
I would like to confirm that our internet is working today. So if everyone could just let us know in the chat if you can hear us okay and see Jayda okay.
Yes.
That would help.
Here I am. I should be in a square. and I should be not too glitchy. It's and of course, if you come to this later, we have to kind of give it like an hour or so after the live stream stops.
Oh yeah, you should clarify that for viewers.
Yeah, because there's a long processing time, and because our internet is not fast, this is why we don't look like we appear in HD. But you know, that's kind of nice. You don't see all my wrinkles. And maybe sometimes when it's processing, it can't process as fast as it would like to because our dismal internet. So after the live stream ends, it's available for rewatch, but it's often better to leave about we were saying a half hour, but we're thinking maybe an hour at this point because our live streams are getting longer and longer.
Our stream goes for.
And then that will allow it to kind of finish working because a lot of people report that they see a mismatch between vocalization and visualization, and that's generally due to the processing. It hasn't quite worked itself out yet.
Yeah, and because of our internet speed, it's not gonna. It's happening on YouTube's end, not on our end. So it looks as though everything is working as usual. And one of the reasons I know that is because everyone's chiming in on whether or not they do or do not like coffee and how much they like and or dislike powdered milk.
Oh, good. That is a
obviously it is working. All right, great stuff.
Excellent. Yeah, I like it for generally, like I say, I have powdered milk in the house for baking usually. I kind of like it in a bunch of different little things, but it's not a bad creamer. It's not bad.
I think it's pretty
good. It's not the worst, but you know, in a pinch. Okay. I am going to jump right into it. There are several videos at this point that we've done, so actual tutorials. Which Mr. InStitches will regularly link in the chat. And once this has become a finished live stream, we will make sure all of those tutorial reference videos are linked in the description box, including the playlist for this year's entire calendar blanket series. So if you're still catching up or you think you missed one or something, we'll have all of those references in the description box after this becomes a finished live stream. And if you need a real good close-up of how to do the whip stitch when sewing, we've got 2 different videos in which we demonstrate that. And one of them includes doing the whip stitch on gigantic granny squares, which is our 2017 calendar blanket, where we did large, super fancy granny squares that all had sort of like a plain white edging around it. And I whip stitched those together. I just prefer to do that, especially when I'm getting to the end of a blanket where I've made really big fancy squares. I don't typically want to make the attention. I don't want to put the attention on the joining. I'd rather have the attention on the squares. So that's another good reason to do that. But like I said, it uses up very little yarn. So I'm just using my yarn needle today. I've cut myself a nice long length, and I'm going to start with my first 3 squares. I'm going to put these guys to the side. I might actually put them down here. And you can only sew 2 squares together at a time. So all I'm going to do is just decide like which I like the front or the back of a square better, maybe what angle I want it at, like if I feel like top or a bottom. With this one, the 9 patch, there isn't. This is the first one we did. And I'm actually going to start with that one because I like I said earlier, I laid them all out in a way that I kind of liked. I felt like all the different little shapes kind of complemented each other. So I'm going to start with that one. And I'm going to sew it to our 3 patch. I really like this one. I like it up and down, but I think I'm going to go with it width-wise. So I am going to go with it in this direction. So that being said, I take my 2 squares and I'm going to put them right sides together. So the wrong sides are facing out. And I'm going to start in the corner stitch. So I'm using the chain. Just put my needle right through the chain stitch in the corner. I'm just going to show that, guys, as closely as I can. So there's my needle going through the chain stitch in the corner of 1. And then the corresponding chain stitch. And like we said, we've got video tutorials where we show this in great detail. So if you need extra help, then you can totally check out those reference videos. And then I'm just going to hold my squares together and I'm going to whip stitch. And whip stitch means your needle is always going in the same direction. So you're always going from back to front, over the edge, back to front, over the edge, back to front, over the edge. that is a whip stitch. And you just sort of pick out 2 little stitches at a time. And you sew through them. 2 little stitches at a time. We've done this kind of method for a seam on countless videos for countless projects. It's a really simple way to join things together. And you don't want to pull too tightly. You don't want to make your stitches too tight. And you don't really want them to be too loose either. So just kind of, I like to go yoink, yoink with my baby finger. And then, so it's not, I'm not yanking with my whole hand. I'm just going doink, doink with my baby finger. So doink,
you gotta
doink.
get the doink, doink
It's the
right.
doink, doink.
Because if
doink,
you
doink.
yank, it's too much.
Yank is too much.
But the doink, doink,
Doink, doink is just
right
right.
on. That's right on.
Hey, English fails me sometimes, and I just don't have the right words to describe it. No yank, yank. You want to doink, doink.
I think we have a tutorial on that.
We have a tutorial on doinking, not yanking.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and here's another thing. I'm gonna sip my coffee.
Here's a question from Jana.
Lay it on me.
Do you go through both strands of the V?
So you're talking about the 2 little loops that run across the top of the stitch. Yes, I'm using the whole top of the stitch. So just pretend you were crocheting. When you stick your hook through both the loops that run across the top of a stitch, I'm bringing my needle through the top of the whole stitch. So I'm using the full top of the stitch, which is running underneath both loops. So yes. And the reason I do that is, one, it doesn't really affect, because I'm sewing, it doesn't affect the seam, but it does make it stronger because I'm running the needle through the strongest part of the stitch. So that's another reason I do it. It's also just easy. I can sort of see what I'm doing as I work along here. I was going to say, if you've got squares that don't perfectly line up with each other, are you getting trolled, Mr. InStitches?
Shell is holding back the trolling. Shell said that she's holding the trolling back. Yeah.
Because it's overcast and gloomy.
Maybe because it's overcast and gloomy today. I don't know. She might unleash it. We'll see. But Julie says, easy on the yanking and the doinking. This is a family channel. And I have to agree.
Good point. Sound effects. Sound effects.
These yanks and doinks are related to crochet only.
Yeah. It's the sound you get when you accidentally pull out one of the hairs on your forehead. Doink, doink, you know. Yeah, so I was going to say, if you've got squares that don't fully align, so some of them ended up a bit smaller, or, you know, like they're a little wider than they are tall, or anything like that, like we've said all through this project, as long as you've got 36 stitches in your border edge along every single side of your square, 36, and that doesn't include the little chain 2 corners, but 36 stitches on every side of every square, they'll work. If you've got a square that is super tight, I have one, the 4 little pinwheels that we did. What did we call that one? That was the pinwheel square.
The pinwheel square.
Yeah. So it's like a smaller version of our hourglass square. My pinwheel squares is kind of on the tight side. It's almost sized down evenly all the way around by like a ½ an inch. Not a big deal because the count is still correct. But if you find sewing them all together is a bit troubling, you can always block one of your squares to loosen up a little bit. So if some of your squares are smaller or they're a little bit shorter than they are long, but the stitch count is correct, you can block them before you join them if you want to, or you can just struggle your way through it and then do the blocking when the whole thing's put together. So don't stress too much about that. I don't. And my blankets always work out fine. So.
I have a question here from Carolyn. Carolyn asks, will crocheting the patches together work as well?
Absolutely. We've got another video. Actually, the video we have on 3 methods of joining talks about using the whip stitch method, which I am doing, the sewing method, or you can slip stitch them together, or you can single crochet them together. Technically, you can join them in any way you want, but try to keep the borders narrow because we are planning on doing a relatively simple border, but the border is kind of based on the seams of our squares all kind of joining each other. So I would advise against anything super lacy or, you know, knotted or complicated or braided or anything like that. You can, you might just have to adjust your border if you go with something ultra fancy. So I would stick with just the simplest stuff. Again, because we're kind of trying to bring more attention to the squares themselves and less about the border, but it's your blanket, baby. You can do whatever you want. Single crocheting creates a really neat ridge effect. I haven't got that blanket around, but if you single crochet 2 squares together, you want to make sure that they are right sides facing out. You want the ridge to show on the right side of your fabric, and right sides facing together if you do not want the ridge to show on the right side of your blanket. So in other words, if you single crochet your stitches together, on one side you'll just see a very neat seam with a perfect, almost looks like a computer's done it, perfect little stitching between every single set of stitches all the way down between your squares. And on the reverse side, you'll get the actual single crochet. So that actual stitch that creates a ridge in between your 2 blocks. And that's a really cool look. We demonstrate that in the tutorial that Mr. InStitches has the link for. And I really like that one. I think that would look really cool with this blanket. I also think the slip stitch method would look really neat.
Which one is that one?
That's the method, the 3
methods
joins.
to join granny squares.
The 3 one.
There is the video link if anyone needs that.
Now, having said that, if you single crochet your blocks together, it will take up more yarn. How much more yarn? I can't say exactly, but it'll take up the most amount of yarn of these 3 methods. Slip stitching will take up the middle amount of yarn, and whip stitching, like I'm doing, will take up the least amount of yarn. So if you don't have a lot of the same border color left, then go with the least usage method, which is sewing, like I'm doing. If you've got a mountain or you bought yarn especially to join your blankets with, knock yourself out. Use that single crochet method and go with that ridge, because it does look really cool. It also makes it a really firm join. It's not going to go anywhere. Excellent question. You know what? I think I did it. I did it sideways anyway.
A question from Ravenheart. Do we have a video on sewing pockets to clothing? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I don't think we've done one of those.
No.
You know what I did?
We'll have to add that to the...
I actually went the wrong way. I have to take all this out. Okay.
The list of tutorials.
Thanks for the suggestion. So what I wanted to do was sew this widthwise.
Just so you know,
like this.
There is a mild level of trolling.
A mild level of trolling.
It's mild, but it's there.
Good to know there, everybody. So I've already started off on the wrong foot. I got so excited talking that I started seaming down the wrong side. So I'm actually seaming my border together so that my squares actually not.
You're
my
too
stripes
excited.
Are vertical, not horizontal.
It's the coffee.
So,
maybe we OD'd on the coffee and the homemade whitener.
This is a good learning thing. So creamer? I'm going to show you
whitener. What do you call it? A coffee creamer?
I think they call it. Well, a creamer means it's already kind of in liquid form. Coffee whitener is the powder. Yeah, that's what I mean. I think that's what those products are called. I don't know. Anyway.
We'll stick to crochet.
I'm not a food marketing agent. I have no idea what any of these things are called. So if you're going to start taking some stitches out because, like me, you accidentally put them together wrong, I find this is the easiest and the neatest method to do this with. Take your needle, gently split your 2 squares, and pull up on that uppermost loop, and then the next one. So don't try to do 2 loops at once because you'll pull on your stitches. Just pull them apart a little bit, look for that next loop, slip your hook or your needle underneath it, and just gradually unsew your 2 blocks. So if you do run into an issue, this is a nice, easy, sort of gentle method to take them apart. So I'm just going to unsew my 2 blocks and then put them back together in the right order and start sewing again. It's actually kind of nice.
It's a nice quiet afternoon.
It was.
The weather is slightly cool, a little bit breezy, but not too much, and it's cloudy.
It's cloudy.
It looks like it wants to snow.
Winter is coming.
Winter is coming.
Like we said this morning.
Speaking of winter is coming, if anyone missed it, we put out a really, I would like to toot our own horn.
Toot your horn, my dear.
Fancy video tutorial on a gothic wrap today. So if anyone missed that, definitely check it out.
Mr. InStitches filmed an entire lookbook for it and everything. So he even played the cello.
I did not play the cello. Okay, so
very nice cello music though.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. And that, actually, I have it right here behind you. I'm
going to link that for anyone who wants to check that out later.
If you are a beginner, it's a really fun pattern. You can do the whole thing using one single stitch, and you can fight your way through the edging, which isn't difficult if you just sort of slow down and pay attention to what you're doing. So I highly recommend it if you're a beginner to give that a try, because it is not difficult. And it is substantial, it is gorgeous, and when you finish it, you'll feel like a real boss, because when you're starting out and you make something and it looks amazing and people go, oh, wow, that's amazing, and you're like, I made this. It feels good every single time.
Big thank you to Melody for the super chat.
Hi, Melody, thank you. What's up with Melody?
No comment from Melody, just a super chat.
Just a sweet...
Just a little
sweet little hello from Melody.
Show support.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I'm almost unsewn this whole seam here.
Does anyone have any questions in regards to sewing these squares together, or the patchwork calendar blanket squares,
or any of our calendar blankets for that
or
matter?
Any of the calendar blankets?
We
have like 5 of them, I think.
5 of them.
Oh, and also we have new this year, I put up a page on our website that shows all the calendar blankets we've done, so that you can see them all in one place.
Project
so
roundup.
If anyone's interested, like a project roundup, if anyone's interested in seeing them all, or maybe following them, because I mean, it doesn't matter what year, obviously, you do them in. They're on our website, and you go to the, I think it's just calendar blankets. That's the page.
That's the page?
Yeah, actually, I might have it here. I might have the link if anyone's interested. Let me see if I have it.
All right, I'm going to start this again.
I do.
I like this, and I like this, so I'm going to spin it. So now I'm working across the top edge, and it looks like that now. Now I've got myself sorted out.
Oh, we already have a bunch of people working on the gothic wrap.
Ooh,
wow.
I have it right here.
Our viewers do not waste any time getting to the new project.
Winter is coming. You want to make sure
you're
be
ready
and cozy.
Warm.
This thing is...
That is so puffy.
It's love
like
it.
Super puffy.
It is so indulgent. I feel so fancy in it. Love it. I'm actually leaning against it because it is so poofy.
Warm and soft.
It's lovely. I love it.
Linda asks, are you facing right sides together?
I am facing right sides together in order to sew. But let me tell you how this makes your stitching look. I'm using the whip stitch method, and the wrong side of my blanket will show the stitches on an angle. Bunk, bunk, bunk. So here's, if you've got your 2 stitches that you're sewing through, the wrong side will show every whip stitch kind of like, how do I do this? Like this, like forward or back slashes. On the right side, they'll all be straight up and down. So if you don't care, you can sew them right sides together or wrong sides together. But if you sew them right sides together, the wrong side, the stitches look like this, and on the right side, the stitches look like that. But your sewing really won't show because it's a very small, minute little stitch. So if you accidentally sew a right side to a wrong side, it's mostly the look of your squares that you have to worry about, not so much the stitching or the joining. But that's the only difference in this method, at least. Ding, ding, ding.
We have a super chat from Carlene.
Hi, Carlene. Thank you.
Carlene says, you guys are the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. It's another Friday. It's another Friday.
They keep coming around.
They keep coming.
Like the hands on a clck. The think. The dink. The dink.
It's just really nice to be able to have some time in a week to sit down with everybody and just recap whatever we're working on.
Take a breath.
Work on a bit of a project together. I like that. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of people are working on their own projects and just hanging out.
Well, we are all about hanging out here. Mr. Stitches made us a fancy cup of coffee.
I'm sorry I only made the 1 cup each.
I think it's probably best that you only made the 1 cup each because
I'd also like to point out that you got more than me.
Oh, did I?
Because when I poured mine, I was like a little over half a cup, and I'm like,
really?
How did she do that? I'm just teasing.
I thought you made us 1 cup.
I'm just teasing.
I swear I didn't fill the cup with the bread.
I know your tricks. You always get the biggest cup. And then you go, I only had 1.
I only had
Meanwhile,
1 cup.
It's like 4 cups of coffee. I missed some questions. What?
What have we got?
I did not miss questions. Let me see. Okay, here's one from Margaret.
Hi, Margaret.
Would adding extra squares help straighten out my wobbly pinwheel square?
Adding extra squares. Okay. Do you mean adding extra squares to the pinwheel square itself? Or do you mean adding more squares around it? Can you just clarify that question a little bit? If your whole square with your 4 different pinwheels ends up being 36 stitches along each side, then don't worry about it. Where's mine? I'm going to just...
I found a question here from Cameron.
Okay, let me just, 1 second, Cameron. This is my pinwheel square, and you can see that it's a lot smaller. It comes out a lot smaller. I'm holding it up against my hourglass square. So it comes out a lot smaller than the other one because it's tight. Don't worry about it. And there's also like a little bleep. Again, English failed me, bleep.
Yes, to go with the doink and the yank. Bleep.
There's a little so my
we're gonna have to do a
kind
tutorial on what the sound effects mean. So
just the language that I use.
This is a chart to describe what doink, boink, and yoink means.
Yoink. Okay, so my edges of my square aren't perfectly even either. A few things. If you find it's too small, I recommend blocking it gently so that you square it out, you ease up those stitches, and you loosen it up a little bit so it'll size out to match the rest of your squares. But that's only if you've got the 36 stitches along each side. If your stitch count is correct, then block it to make it a little bit bigger. The little wonky edges that you might have, if you finished your border and you feel like there's like this kind of happening, first of all, there is going to be a dip between squares. So you want to put on that border. And even with your border, if you have a little bit of a dip, don't worry about it because your stitches are not set in stone and they will pull up a little bit. So even if I'm just sort of fiddling with it here, I can get them to all sort of sit more or less straight. So don't worry about it too much. That will disappear into the overall join of your blanket. When you stitch every single set of stitches together along your seams, any of that wonkiness will completely disappear as well. So if you are worried about it not wanting to size up properly, go ahead and block it before, or you can just sort of like fight your way through it and block the whole blanket afterwards. But don't worry too much about that. Mine's tight and kind of funny too, but that's just sort of the nature of the pattern.
Okay, so
Cameron?
Yeah, Cameron has a question here. I am working on an Afghan with the falling leaves from 2018. Would you put a border on it?
Yes. In fact, I don't know what kind of a border you want to add to it. I like working borders around the falling leaves pattern because there is simple little gaps that you can use. So you can do multiple of 3 based borders. If you've seen our Pretty Little Dishcloth tutorial, we use the falling leaves stitch in the Pretty Little Dishcloth tutorial. And then the border we made on that pattern is the falling leaf stitch. So you kind of finish your entire dishcloth or blanket and then work one entire row of the falling leaf stitch all the way around the edge. And it's really cool because it kind of gives the whole thing like a bit of a, it's not a flush edge, which I like because if you had a not so perfect Afghan edge, then it would cover for that. So that looks kind of cool. But yeah, you can also do anything along the edge of that, especially if you make a blanket in one single stitch. If it's a super fancy stitch with like multiple repeating rows, then adding a border should be less about the border and more about the blanket. But if you've made a blanket with a really simple repeating stitch, like the falling leaf stitch, which is so pretty and has such a nice texture, I love that stitch, probably one of my top 10, then you can crazy with a really fancy border, like a real super amazing edging, or just a really, really subtle edging. It's entirely up to you. You know what I would do, Cameron? I would make a dishcloth size of the using that stitch, and then fiddle around with a handful of border ideas and see what you like. That's often what I do if I can't decide.
A handful of people have mentioned that they're struggling with the pinwheel. They're finding it the harder one.
It is definitely the most challenging one.
Are there any tips or tricks that
yeah,
you want to
I have a few. So first of all, it's a really nifty pattern. It looks really cool on its own. So if you want to fight your way through it, I recommend it because it's one that you can have in your repertoire, and the more you do it, the easier it gets. If this is not your idea of a nice time sitting down and fighting your way through the pattern, skip that one. Do another one of like the squares that you do like. Make another 9 patch. Do another blanket square in one of the other patchworks that you like in order to fill out your 12. You don't have to use all 12 patterns. We were really excited this year to bring you 12 different patchwork patterns, but it doesn't mean that you have to use all 12 in your finished blanket.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
mix and match them.
Yeah, it's like a sampler. So if you find that one of them gives you trouble or one of them you just fall in love with, I have a few that I really love. There's nothing saying you can't just make a few more of those, because the whole thing will still look very much like a patchwork quilt, and it's yours. So you can add any set of those pattern stitches together that you want.
You can use just one of the square designs and keep the same colors. You can change the colors and make a blanket out of that.
It's definitely that pinwheel is, like I said, it's probably the most challenging square we did this year so far. December hasn't happened yet. But that was probably the most challenging one. And I think like we tried to go through it as evenly as we could. For all of the squares, I will say this: cheat where you have to. Make it work.
Coming from someone who cheats at the Granny Square game on a regular basis.
There's nothing wrong with cheating in crochet.
There will be no cheating here. None.
That's what I love about crochet as an art. You make it work. There are right ways to approach it, but there's really no wrong way to approach it. If you get an outcome that you like, you're the winner. So if you, like, for example, we were showing you how to join as you go in a lot of the cases, because last year we did a lot of sewing on our folk art calendar blanket, and sewing is kind of, it can be time consuming. And after you've sort of finished crocheting something, the idea that you have to sort of maybe sit there and sew it down is not always everybody's cup of tea, which I totally get, because even I am not in the mood to sew.
Oh, but what a blanket.
But what a blanket, I know. might be my favorite one. I just love that. But we were trying to eliminate the sewing for this year, just to change things up. But we did say that if you absolutely had to, you could forego the join as you go bits, especially for the patchworks or the pinwheel square, and just literally hand sew them together afterwards. It still won't show. It won't change the overall effect. It won't change the sizing. And it's a patchwork quilt. So the more patchy and stitchy it looks, the more genuine it looks, because traditional patchwork quilts, especially the crazy quilts that where everything just was like, use every spare scrap, don't throw anything out. They would do crazy stitch work on it. They would do embroidery on it. They would embroider their names or little smiley faces and stuff. It just looks like a bunch of thready chaos. But I love that. So yeah, that's, if you're having trouble with it, first of all, don't stress, don't fret. It is not, it's not worth stressing and fretting over. Just put that in the back of your head and say, okay, I can do this. I can do this later. I can do this now. I can fight my way through it, or I can just shelve it and put another one of the squares in its place. You can totally do that. So yeah. And that goes for everything. Crochet's supposed to be fun. Don't let it stress you out. Look at me. I even tried sewing. I started sewing my squares together here, and I literally started off on the wrong foot, putting them in the wrong direction. So it's
what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? I also like sewing my blanket squares together. I haven't honestly met too many joining methods that I haven't liked yet, but I do enjoy sitting and sewing because it's like, it feels calm. Maybe it feels old fashioned. I feel like sitting here just sort of doing a little hand stitchery. It just, I don't know. I feel kind of connected to history or something. I like it. I also feel like I'm in control of what I'm doing. I can see the individual stitches that I'm sewing together. I can see, like, I can control the tension in the yarn. I like it.
Nancy says it's relaxing.
It is relaxing.
Yeah.
Yes, Nancy. I love sewing too. I'm a huge fan of sewing. So anytime I get to run a needle and thread through something, I'm usually a pretty happy camper.
Coming together nicely.
Yes, and I've got the first little seam done in my 2020 Patchwork Calendar Blanket. That feels like a bit of a celebratory moment. There. Little knot on the end. If you're crocheting, it's even easier. You just fasten off and pull that last tail through. Do a little weaving in of your tail just so it doesn't come undone on you. I usually just sort of weave it through a few stitches and then double back like I do if I finish off when I'm crocheting.
I have a question here from Michelle.
Sure. What's up, Michelle?
Do you do only one side at a time, or will you do two sides at a time once you get to the next row?
Do I do one side at a time or two
one
sides
side at a time, or will you do two sides at a time once you get to the next row?
I don't think I understand that question.
We're going to need clarification on that question, Michelle.
Okay, well, first let me just show you. I finished the first seam between my squares. It always looks a little off kilter because it's just the way they come together. So they're not though, so don't worry about it. But there's patch number 1, patch number 2. I've sewn them together through the middle. I think that looks nice and tidy. And then of course, once you have the whole thing sewn together or stitched together, we put the border on, and any of your little stitching errors that may be there, or any wonky edges or funny joins, will disappear. So don't sweat the tiny little details. Usually we're the only ones who can see it in our own work.
If you've left a question and I have missed it, just keep putting it in. I can't read out every single comment and question because the chat kind of zooms by quickly. So just repeat your question and eventually I'll see it. We have a super chat. The super chats stand out because they have a big, giant color block on them.
They kind of grab your attention.
Yeah. This is from Tracy.
Hi, Tracy.
Thank you to Tracy. Tracy says, any mottos used to make it through this crazy year? Mine, be the person your dog thinks you are. keep me from needing bail money sometimes.
Yes.
Hey, any positive sentiments this year, I think, would be beneficial to everyone.
Yes. I used to say I waited tables once upon a time in my youth at a really nice restaurant with a really horrible boss. And he was absolutely the worst. And I used to say to myself on the worst day, when he had just finished screaming and yelling at us, and we still had to go out there and be all smiley face and everything, I used to say to myself, this shift too will end. And then sometimes this day too will end. And lately, this year too will end. I know it sometimes sounds funny on the front of it, but it's actually kind of a relief to me because I think to myself, you know what? The moment you're in right now is so fleeting. It might feel good, it might feel bad, but there's only that one moment. It's very unique in the passage of time. So it's helpful to try and find the bright spot wherever you can. And I love that idea of trying to be the person your dog thinks you are. I think our dogs think we're pretty great. So yes, I like that. Other than that, I think I think I've just said to myself, okay, I'm having a rotten day, I'm going to go to Pinterest. I'm having a rotten day, I'm going to go to the craft room. What else can I make?
Okay, so Michelle has clarified her question.
Oh, great, yes.
Okay, so like the second square on the second row would touch two sides, do you do just one and fasten off, or do you use the length long enough to do both sides
I understand what you're saying.
of the square?
Okay, so I stitched this seam together and I fastened off over in the tail so that I could move to the next seam and start that one. It's too far away to try and run your yarn underneath like the whole 36 stitches along the top of the middle square. So just fasten off and weave in the tails. If you are sewing together these two and then these two and then these two so that they're all kind of in a line, if you're working on the floor, you can totally do that. I find that easiest if I've got them all laid out on the floor. And what I think Michelle means and what I'm trying to explain is if you've laid out your entire blanket, so like all 11 in this case, or 12 if you're done, and you just start sewing the seam between the first two, and then you keep sewing all the way down the length of the blanket, and you don't interrupt your yarn, whether you're sewing or crocheting, you can totally do that. It's just easier to manage the tension and the neatness of it and to not get lost if you lay it all out on the floor or a big table and don't move it while you're working. So you can totally do that too. That works as well. There's no real right or wrong way to join these together. You just want to kind of go for neatness and you want the seams to all butt up against each other. That's basically it. So I'm just sewing them in sets of 3 first. I could also have done sets of 4, but I wanted to do the 3s because the 12th one is still missing. So I figured I would sit here. And plus, I'm working in a small area chatting with you all today. So I thought if I did it in sets of 3, it would be a little easier to manage. So, but it won't overall affect the look of the blanket when it's done. Good question, though.
Yeah.
And thank you for clarifying that, Michelle. I know it's so hard sometimes to compose yourself like in a quick little chat.
So there's been a whole bunch of questions.
Oh, great.
I'm trying to get to as many as possible.
Super.
In regards to sending us pictures of the work you've done, absolutely. The best place to send them is Etsy via your Etsy account.
Or just a little messenger service that Etsy
the
has.
messenger service. So Etsy will see them soonest.
Yeah.
But you can also send them to Instagram or Twitter.
Yes. And we do check Instagram and Twitter, just not as frequently.
Not as frequently.
But we do get there.
And do we have plans for a blanket 2021?
Of course. But it's a surprise, like it always is.
A big yes to that?
Yes, we've done one every year since 2016.
Yes, that's right.
And I have to say, I love having a single project. I mean, I make a lot of projects every year, obviously. But I love having one ongoing project that can kind of point to the whole year for me. And I feel like, we didn't know where 2020 was going to go when it started this year, but I somehow feel like a patchwork quilt is kind of a nice representation of 2020 because some months were up and some months were crazy and some months were down. And every month, like with a square kind of reminds me of that. So some of the squares are calm and easy. That's what some of these months were like this year. Other months were just a little more trying than others. And that's what some of the patterns were like. So I don't know. I feel like it wound up being an accidentally good representation of 2020.
Do we have more amigurumi in the works? Short answer, yes. Mm-hmm. I don't know how soon we'll get them out, but
we always have a little.
Yeah, we always have something.
Yeah, we always have a little something.
This is from Crafty Chats.
Hi, Crafty Chats.
Do you cut your sewing yarn every time you start the next 2 sets of squares, or can you
just continue with the one you got?
Piece? Yeah,
I'm piecing. I don't know if you just saw me do that, but again, in an effort to use my yarn in its entirety, I don't like leaving little bits behind. I cut myself a long length. I know it's enough to get through at least one seam. And then I just start the next seam with whatever I had left. And if I run out halfway through, I cut another nice long length. I knot that in. Same knotting procedure that I use when I'm crocheting. give myself like a nice, make that knot as tight as I possibly can. So it's nice and small.
Yeah. A lot of people are saying a good way to help with 2020 is to not watch the news.
Yes.
And watch crochet tutorials instead.
Hang out with us.
And I would have to wholeheartedly agree with that.
Totally.
If there's a piece of advice I could give today is do not watch the news.
No.
Because all the news is, especially the mainstream news, it's just they're just trying to keep you glued with sensational garbage.
They just want to keep you watching.
It's not news. Isn't news anymore.
No,
it's
Yeah, I remember back in the day, it was like the news came on at 6 o'clock. It ran for an hour, and it was basically just the biggest stories of the day.
Yeah, it's like
they weren't trying to fill air.
It used to be this. Hey, this is what happened.
Yeah, here's what happened.
It's not that anymore.
No.
It's a whole bunch of stuff.
No, it's mostly entertainment.
It's entertainment. It's like, hey, I'm going to speculate about this, and I'm going to speculate about that, and now I'm going to give you my opinion on this speculation. And it's like, no, thanks.
Yeah, I don't need that.
Watch YouTube.
Watch YouTube. Watch animal videos.
Yeah, animal videos. They're the best.
They're the best. Hang out with your crafty friends in this kind of a situation. I love this. This is as real as it gets, folks.
I recommend furry little animal videos.
Furry animal videos. And, that's a favorite.
Your hobby, whatever you like, hobby
DIY, reading.
DIY.
Oh my gosh, I love reading.
Video games. Join book clubs. Like there's book clubs online if you like reading. Get Audible.
Listen to books while you do other stuff. That's fun.
If any of you love books, but you can't find the time to sit and read, you can get Audible.
Oh, and if you have a local libraries have been really great at doing more and more downloadable Audible books, which are free with your membership, and usually memberships to a local library are free. So check out your local library too. I know like our local library is subscribed to dozens of magazines, and I can view those magazines, the newest magazine in some whatever topic I feel like looking at, for free because it's part of my membership. And there's still something about looking at a magazine, I have to say. All right, there we go.
Wow, you got 3 joined together.
Now I'm speeding. Well, now that I don't make mistakes, it's coming together.
Look at you.
So it's not even blocked yet, and that's 36 inches across.
Do you have any suggestions for super quick Christmas gifts?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
Are you kidding?
Are you nuts?
Great. You're gonna send her off like a rocket ship.
Okay. Now. Yes, I do. First, we usually do a live stream on this topic every year because there's like so much to cover and remember every year. But I will bullet point it. First of all, make a list of everybody you want to make something for. First and foremost, most important. Secondly, make a list of all the things that you think they might like. Also important. You don't want to make something for someone that, they won't like. So think it through. Make a list of, just like sketch that. It doesn't have to be like the final be all end all answer, but make just like some notes. Like, they said they wanted this, or they said they liked this, or they might like one of these, or this is their favorite color. So to make some notes for each person. Then, this is the most important part. Figure out how much time and money you have to donate or dedicate to each of these projects. So if you've got oodles of time and you crochet really quickly, then you can pretty much bank on being able to do everything on your list. But if you crochet really slowly, or you don't have a lot of time because life is busy, then keep that in mind when you're deciding what you want to do. So for example, if you've got a month left to when you see everyone, or when you've got the postal deadline, if you're going to be mailing gifts out, and you've got 12 people to make things for, you don't want to saddle yourself with having to make 12 blankets for 12 people and then get them in the mail. You know what I mean? So be realistic about the stuff you want to make. I always like to look at my stash of yarn first and go, okay, is there anything that I can use up here? I bought this really nice ball of yarn a few months ago. I had nothing in mind, or I had a simple thing in mind. Go through your make-ahead stash. If you're the type of person like me who's constantly making stuff and putting it in the make-ahead stash, you may have forgotten some of the neat things you've already made this year. So once you have your list of people, grab your make-ahead stash box, pull it out and see if there's anything in there that might be a nice add-on gift, the complete gift. Maybe there was something you started and you're like, I can just get that finished. And, Abby would really like that, or whatever. those are the first things I would do. And then just start. I like to start with if I have a really big project, like a blanket to do and a couple of little things like Christmas stockings to do, I will start the blanket. And then when I'm kind of bored with the blanket, I will put the blanket down and I will jump to the tiniest project on my list, because sometimes I can get a tiny project done in one sitting. That makes me feel like I can check something off the list. I feel like I've done something, it's accomplished. So that's the whole setup. Once you know what it is you want to make, that makes the whole decision-making process a lot faster and easier. We have over 400 tutorials alone. So like, it doesn't necessarily have to be Christmas themed. Maybe you want to make like a little stuffed toy or a little bag, or maybe you want to make a full-on blanket or whatever it is you want to make. Then you can kind of come back to the world of tutorials and like punch it in like Jayda InStitches, stuffed creeper, and then poof, there it is. That would be exactly what I would do. I would also make a list of, after you've got like, oh, I want to make a Christmas stocking, I want to make this, I want to make that. Make note of where you know the tutorial is or the pattern is, so that you can go and get it. And that just keeps you organized, and you won't be sort of flapping around at the last minute trying to get it all done. In terms of like cute little quick project, we've got tons of cute Christmas crochet ornaments, little things you can put on a present or hang on a tree. We've got really pretty coasters, so that's nice. You can make sets of those. We've got things that, if made in Christmassy colors, make a very nice Christmas themed treat, like our pretty little dishcloth. So dishcloths, don't ever underestimate how much people love homemade dishcloths. I always have a pile of them, and they're the first things that disappear from my make ahead stash, because everybody asks me for them all the time, because they're just the best. Homemade dishcloths work better than store-bought dishcloths, and they're cute. You can make them really pretty and personalized. And same thing if you want to like put two together and turn it into a hot pad. People love that stuff. Yeah, it really depends on what it is you want to make.
So the best way to find those tutorials, I'm going to link our home page, the YouTube channel homepage. Go to the home page, and then you can either click on the videos tab across the top and scroll through all the videos. Yep. Or if you want, you can go to playlists and go specifically to Christmas stuff.
Yes. Great question. And yeah, it just depends largely on what it is you want to make for people. So I also like to do a thing where every year I make something that goes on everybody's presents, but they're color coordinated for each person. So for example, every year we do like a little gift tag related thing. We have some really cute crochet projects that are small, and they can be used as just like little tag toppers or present toppers. We've got little things that are great for people's stockings. I mean, wow, what do you want to make?
Abby asks, do you have any pattern designing tips?
Yeah, read and practice patterns. Get as many patterns from different people as you can, and review them and take a look at them and see how they're written, so that you have a good idea of how most people are used to approaching a pattern. That's the first and foremost important thing. And then when it comes to designing, make sure it's something that you like, something that you want to wear or display or play with or whatever. Practice it several times before you write it all down, and then read it out loud to yourself. Make sure that you haven't skipped any steps. And that's
practice.
I have been reading patterns and crocheting and knitting for over 30 years. So, I mean, I know some people can come to it, and just have it right up because they're savants. I am not a savant. I have been doing this a long time. I have been collecting lots of books and stuff. That's a big part.
We're gonna have to check in with our Instagram account, because
everybody's sending stuff.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of stuff sent, and
great.
Yeah, so Cameron here has piqued my interest. So supposedly there's some surprises over on Instagram, so we're gonna have to go check that out.
I do like.
We'll try and get to that over the weekend.
Yeah. We should sort of get some time, because we both like. See, this is the thing. We both like to go through the feed and see the pictures.
Yes.
And we both have to be together in order to do that.
Yes. And it's really annoying that we have to be together all the time.
So getting the time where we can actually sit down and do that is sometimes tricky. But
if I missed a question, I apologize. I can't get to every single one, because sometimes I just don't even see them because the chat is moving along.
If it's something we've already answered and somebody here kind of knows that, then just
please
feel free
answer for us,
help us out.
we don't like repeating the same answer over and over again.
But if you've put it down once and you think maybe it got missed, then just put it down again. Just try to give it like a minute or two in between.
Yeah, about a minute or two, and then just repeat your question.
The chat moves fast, and it also moves at different staggered intervals for different locations.
Yes,
we can both be watching the same event on our phones and on the TV, and the chat is all over the place. So
and sometimes certain
I'll say, "Did you see that?" You'll
sometimes
say no.
Certain comments will be posted somewhere else, but it actually won't post here because the internet is slow and it glitches. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah. So just be patient with us.
Patience
is great. Gotta cut some more yarn.
Do lots of yarn crochet. I think that's a yarn ball.
I've got just tying in another little bit here. Keep sewing. I've got one row of 3 stitched together, and now I'm working on row number 2. Make sure.
Crafty chat says designing 1% success, 99% experiment. No, sorry, designing 1% success. 99% experimentation.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it in a nutshell. Yeah. That's true. And that goes for everything.
Yeah. You have to fiddle and
trial and error.
Sometimes things in your head, like, excuse me, if you sew like I do, or heck, if you do anything creative other than crochet, you sometimes see something in your head, landscaping, even the garden layout, anything. You see it like a fancy meal, the setting of a table. You can see it in your head. And then you start and you're like, this is not going in the direction I thought I was going to go in. Sometimes I just let it happen because sometimes an organic, I start with one idea and it goes somewhere else. And I'm like, oh, that was cool. Other times I try things and I go, this just, no matter how many angles I approach it at, I can't get what I saw in my head. So I leave that aside for another day.
I am going to refill my drink.
Okay.
Do you need anything?
No, I think I'm...
Oh, you still have water?
I'm just, I brought myself up some water too.
All right. Keep the trolling to a minimum, everyone. I'm not here to defend myself.
Mr. Stitches will be right back. In the meantime, I will just... Sorry, I'm just getting to the end of this one thing here. I don't mean to keep drinking the ink every time Mr. InStitches is saying something important, but I just got to my log cabin square. This was one of the squares that I had the most fun making this year. And this is the one standout square in my otherwise all kind of fuchsia and blue, denim blue patchwork quilt. You know, I've got every single version of these patchwork squares in a crazy colored opposite thing, which I'm going to have to stitch together as well. They're sitting in the closet. But this is the one square where I sort of strayed from my 2-color theme and I went with 5 colors. So I love the way it turned out. So I'm using it as a centerpiece. I'm making sure that it's in the center of my blanket because it's kind of a conversation piece. That's another thing you want to do when you're laying out your squares. That's why we said you don't necessarily have to put them in the order that we did them in, because maybe you don't like the order that came in. Maybe you're not doing one of them and you're doing 2 of another or something like that. When you lay them all out, this is something I like to do. I like to do it on the floor. I lay them all out and I fuss and I fiddle and I make sure that they look nice and neat and tidy. Then I'll walk slowly the whole perimeter of the blanket and I'll try to look at it from all different angles. Because sometimes when you're looking at a blanket, especially with crazy patchwork squares like this one, from one angle, you think, yep, that looks really good. And then you get around to maybe like the other side and you go, I think I'd rather spin that block around, or I'd rather reverse those 2, or I have a lot of one color on this side of the blanket. I think I'm going to try and disperse it a little bit more. I always do a perimeter walk and then I fiddle and I change a few things around and then I do it again. And I keep doing that until I have a layout that I like, that I feel looks balanced, looks like I kind of like the patchwork because it's kind of like ordered chaos. But that's what I did. I laid it all out on the floor. I did a perimeter walk, moved a couple, did another perimeter walk, and that's how I arrived at the overall combination that I did. And this one being so different, I wanted to make sure it was kind of in the center because it's a bit of a conversation piece.
All I can see is little trolls in the in the chat.
I can't see it.
The chat has been flooded with trolls. I see what's going on here.
So the trolling has not been.
I just leave for 2 seconds. Tammy asks, can you please show how to do the joining more clearly?
Yes, we have video tutorials on that. So I'm just using the whip stitch. And we really don't have the best internet for live tutorialing.
Okay, so I will plug in the tutorials that are much better video quality.
So just to reiterate, I'm using the whip stitch, which is a sewing method. You don't have to use that. You can also crochet your squares together. It's up to you. We have 2 really helpful, super obviously clear HD videos that you can review at your leisure. One of them is on me whip stitching our 2017 large fancy granny squares together. It's the exact same method that I'm using for these squares, so you can check that video out. Or if you want to explore different joining methods, we have another video that we did a while ago on 3 different methods. So again, we explore the whip stitch method, which I'm using, and we also look at slip stitching and single crocheting squares together. Any one of those methods will be perfectly fine. If there's another one you want to try, go for it. And that will give you a much clearer look at what I'm doing. So today we're just sort of hanging out. We figured we'd answer some questions in general. I'm taking the opportunity to get my squares put together because the end of the year is coming up quick.
There's a question here from Cheryl.
Sure. Hi, Cheryl.
Cheryl asks, can you please let us know how to get your baskets to stiffen? I have tried 3 different kinds and they didn't work. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong.
So the trick to stiff baskets is very tight stitching and very thick stitches. So we used 3 strands held together and we used a hook that, at least in my realm with the yarn I was using, created a very stiff stitch, and I stitched very tightly. So you want tight tension. If you are at your max for tension and you still feel like your stitches aren't completely slammed together and like really thick and strong, you can use a smaller hook that will help make your stitches smaller and tighter, or you can add in an extra strand of yarn. So yarns are not all created equal. Some of them are stiffer than others. Some of them are thinner than others, even if they're all in the same size 4 medium weight category. So we do our best to like try to explain the yarn that we're using. I typically use acrylic for a lot of that because this is a lot of the yarn that I have. But the easiest way to get it stiffened up is to keep very tight tension, put in an extra strand of yarn, or downsize your hook because that will help out quite a bit. And once you've got it made, stuff it full of stuff because some of them will remain stiffer depending on the yarn you've used. Some of them will want to collapse a little bit, but they won't if it's full of stuff. So
we have a suggestion here from Alma.
Hi, Alma.
Alma would like a pattern on a rectangle casserole carrier.
Rectangular casserole carrier.
Wow, that's interesting.
Thank you for the suggestion.
A rectangular casserole carrier.
A rectangular casserole carrier.
That's really hard to say. Rectangular casserole carrier.
Rectangular casserole carrier.
Let's see here. Someone said, Michelle, your videos have inspired me on ways to use up my yarn remnants. Awesome.
Perfect. Glad
we have lots of scrap yarn tutorials.
Also, I'll say this. I like to buy yarn because I think it's pretty. I don't necessarily have a project in mind, which means I usually only like buy 1 or 2 balls of something. I only buy a whole lot of one particular kind of yarn if I have a very specific project in mind or it's on clearance because I'm cheap. But I have a lot of single balls of stuff. So that's why we like to do a lot of projects that really only require 1 ball or less because I figure a lot of you probably do that too.
Crafty Chats asks, how do you avoid puckering when you're sewing together?
So it's all about tension for the most part, making sure that you don't skip any sets of stitches. I like to run my finger between the 2 squares, literally like that. Like I have 1 square sitting on one side of my finger and the other square sitting on the other side of my finger. And that little sort of allows me to kind of see where the next 2 stitches are that I want to grab and then sew. So I'm not sewing. I'm not sewing tightly. I'm not sewing loosely. It's a little bit of doink, doink, not yank, yank.
Here's a few neat ideas for the baskets.
And don't skip any stitches.
Icefox says you could use starch. And Freeloro says use fishing line in between the yarn.
Fishing line. Hey, that's
Does that
cool.
work? Because that's really cool.
That sounds
neat. Fishing line is a bit stiff.
It's a bit stiff.
You'd have to crochet. Would you crochet with that also, or would you run it through afterwards?
You would well, I mean, it depends.
Like sew it through, weave it through afterwards.
That's a good question.
Probably work.
I wouldn't want to crochet with it. I feel like that would really pull into my fingers.
So maybe weave it in after. Yeah, it's worth a try.
Or crochet over top of it somehow.
Yeah.
Cool
I'm sure there's lots of great ideas.
Yeah, keep the suggestions going, everybody.
Keep them coming. If anyone knows answers to anyone's questions, please put them in the chat. It helps us out.
Yes. All right. I'm going to tie in some more yarn.
When joining, do you use the corners or the first stitch?
Yes. Okay. So our corners on our borders are all 2 chains. So if you pull back and you think about the whole edge of one of the squares, it's basically chain, 36 double crochet, chain, flip, chain, 36 double crochet, chain, flip, so on and so on. So I pair up the 2 chains that start just to the side of the first set of double crochets. I start there, all the way across, and I finish my last stitch through the last set of chains that are on the right up against the last set of double crochets. And then when I'm sewing the lengthwise, it's the same thing. So every single stitch gets used, including the chains in the corner. And that way you'll avoid having any gaps. Like, so if you put 4 squares together, you know that you can kind of get that little diamond hole shape in the middle, because usually squares, as much as they look square, the edges are still a little on the round side. So use those corner chains, and then that will pretty much alleviate having any spaces in between. This is great.
I wonder if people's baskets are kind of, folding in or a bit. Could it be the type of yarn?
Well, here, I got one over here.
Because some yarns are way stiffer.
Yeah.
Because the ones you made never fold in. They always kind of sit out.
I've made several of these. So
this is the Big Beautiful Basket. If anyone's curious, we do have a tutorial for this.
I've made several of these. I think I've made 5 at this point. 5 Big Beautiful Baskets. Because the second I make one, I stuff it full of stuff. 4 of them I made using 3 strands of size 4 medium weight yarn held together. The size 4 medium weight acrylic yarn that I use in these projects is either Red Heart, Super Saver, or Comfort. The Red Heart Comfort is often a little thicker than the Super Saver, but not always. Depends on the color. Burnett, Super Value, Grand Value, or Premium, which are all pretty much identical in terms of weight, category, thickness. They're all acrylic. Loops and Threads has some plain old acrylic medium weight yarn. And then there's just various other no names. Oh, and some Mary Max also has the odd one I'm using. Excuse me, the blue actually that I'm using in this blanket is the Mary Maxim one. They're all relatively the same. They're all acrylic. And they're not soft. So I don't use like the Karen's soft yarns. I'm not a big fan of the soft acrylic yarns or anything that's got like called satin or satin finish, because I find that stuff just pills immediately. Like you're not even finished crocheting and it's just got fluffs coming out of it everywhere and it starts to pill on you. It feels nice, but it doesn't last a nice long time. So if you're making something like a workhorse, like a basket, I like the cheap yarn, frankly, for it. I have tried it by using a slightly smaller hook, but I can keep my tension pretty tight when I want to. I did make one basket, Great Big Beautiful Basket, using 2 strands of Burnett Pet blanket yarn. I don't know if they're still making the Pet blanket yarn, but it's a size 5 as opposed to a size 6, which is what their usual blanket yarn is like. And it's that grabby polyester stuff. And that made a nice stiff basket. Stiff enough. The cats, we gave it to Mama for the cats.
Oh, they love it.
And
the cats sleep in it all the time.
Of it mostly. But like, that's pretty stiff.
Mama and Stitches made a bunch.
And that's that was Comforts.
Yeah, look how stiff that is.
Yeah, and one of those Comforts is really, really skinny, that pretty little blue variegated one running through. Yeah. It's very stiff. So tension is very important. If you just can't keep your tension tight enough, try a smaller hook. Or add in even a 4th strand of yarn. There's nothing saying you can't do that.
I would like to ask our community if anyone has any advice. We have a message here from Franca. Franca is one of our channel members.
Thanks, Franca. What's up?
Franca says her son has ADHD and he is struggling with a second lockdown. Does anyone have any advice on how to cope with that?
Great question.
So I'm asking everyone out there. You probably have a lot more experience with this stuff than we do. But do you have any ideas?
Well, speaking as someone who has hyperactive disorder.
Yeah, ADHD is when you're a very excited.
ADHD is attention deficit disorder.
Attention deficit.
So it's difficult to stay focused on a project for too long. I have friends who have that too.
You have to keep your son as busy and occupied as
I don't know
possible.
how old your son is. I don't know how old your son is, but I will say this. For a time, I helped teach karate. And we had many children in the class who had various forms of attention deficit, hyperactivity, autism. Half the class felt like it was on the spectrum, actually. And children in general do very well with physical activity like martial arts. Martial arts is best in class, but there are tons of YouTube videos out there where he can learn the basics. And this is something that he can focus on for short periods of time.
He's not a child. He's 21.
Oh, okay. Well, even better.
So karate is good.
Karate is excellent.
But
any of the martial arts
are. But that's if they're open right now.
No. I'm saying there are tons of videos online of people teaching. It's just like yoga. So yoga, martial arts. You can take a couple of online classes without being in a class full of people. You can move at your own pace and you can practice.
Yeah.
And this is something that it creates mental focus. It creates physical focus, and physical exertion helps the mental brain. So when I, being hyperactive, start to realize that I can't focus on something anymore and I start to feel a little crazy, my usual go-to is to go for a walk. And if going for a walk is not possible because it's freezing cold outside or it's the middle of the night because I have trouble sleeping too, then getting up and doing a couple of katas, which is what the things are called, usually helps me refocus and calm down. And it's also it's handy if he's trying to do something like focus on a task. He can stop what he's doing. He can go off. He can do a kata or practice just making a proper fist, making a nice straight punch, any of these things for 5 minutes, and then stop that and go back to something else. And it's so helpful to just have something that you can leave and then go to something else and then stop that just as quickly. And things like yoga and martial arts don't require any special kind of, they don't require special clothes or special equipment or anything. So I would really recommend he gives that a look if he hasn't thought of that before, because he might find it really helpful. It helped me, and it helped a lot of the kids that I helped teach in our karate dojo.
Yeah, we have some good ideas here. Music and learning an instrument.
That's a great one.
Yeah, that's something you can focus on.
Yes.
And enjoy.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a great big unruly instrument either.
Yeah. I guess what you require is a balance between gentle mental stimulation, but also some physical activity.
I feel like
maybe not too hard.
Learning how to cook, if he's never learned how to cook, is super awesome. This goes for anybody. During this crazy year, I have re-familiarized myself with baking. So I used to do a lot of baking when I was younger and I had time. And then, life takes over and you don't have time to do things. I love food made from scratch. One of the things that I am constantly in awe of my mother-in-law is that she can just pull a feast out of nowhere, and everything is made from scratch. And her food is second to none. I have sampled a lot of good food in my time, but hers is second to none.
I attest to that.
Yes, Mama can cook. Oh my gosh.
Jayda has eaten a lot of my food.
I've stolen a lot of his food.
A lot of my food has been stolen from my plate.
Yes, I love to eat. Well, I love to cook and I love to bake. And baking bread is a real art. So it's fun to kind of flex that muscle. If baking, because not only do you kind of learn something, you have to focus on the task at hand, you have to pay close attention to all the different little elements that go into making a good dish, but then you can eat it. Mm-hmm. Everybody can eat it. So that's fun. I think developing a new hobby is really good.
Someone who struggles with ADHD, is something like a hobby, like putting little models together or putting puzzles together. Is that helpful, or is that kind of a difficult task? I'm curious.
Well,
because
I mean, I don't have ADHD. I only have hyperactive. I'm only hyperactive, and I have defiance disorder.
Cameron mentioned that he has ADHD, so maybe he can.
That would be
he could give some insight.
Yes,
here.
My experience with the kids that I've worked with over the years who've got that kind of a thing going on in their life is that it's not really an inhibitor. Some kids are just calmer than others. A lot of kids grow out of their ADHD. I worked with a child for a long time ago. I was just actually thinking about it. She's got to be in her 30s now. That's how long ago it was that I helped this kid. Anyway, she and her brother both were both had attention deficit disorder, and they really they grew. She grew out of it. So I ran into her again a couple years later, and she kind of grown out of it. So some people grow out of it. Some people go through phases of it. Some people realize that food affects it. Like we're a real complicated chemical machine. Our bodies are amazing and they're complicated. So there are so many things that can affect us at any one. I, for example, noticed that if I don't drink coffee, I'm a lot calmer. I'm not as calm as maybe the average person, but I'm a lot more calmer than I am if I'm drinking coffee. Mm-hmm. So I know that I can balance out my inability to focus sometimes by changing what I eat.
I have a suggestion. I don't know if this is the right direction, but I really enjoy RC cars and hobby.
Yes.
RC hobbies. So maybe, I'm not sure, since he's 21, he might enjoy like flying drones or running RC cars, because when you do that, not only is it really fun to run them on, like build your own little track and run them, but you're also kind of working with them and you're kind of fixing them and you're changing their parts and you're adding different tires and that kind of, I'm not sure. Some people like it, some people don't, but that's something you could try, like a hobby that's not too detailed, like painting little.
Like painting.
People paint tiny little things. Yeah. Like that might be too detailed.
Well, again, one of the reasons that I highly suggest something like martial arts is because a lot of us are stuck in small places too. Like, not everybody has a nice big street with with no traffic that they can go wandering around on, or lives next to a park, or so some of us are stuck in pretty small spaces for a lot of the time. And of course, we, the North, are heading into the winter. Saskatoon just got hammered with a winter storm. So, I mean, you can't just go out for a jog in that, unless you're Iron Man. So martial arts don't require a lot of space either. You can practically stand in one place and do a lot of these exercises. And that's another reason I like it, because it's a good exercise that doesn't actually require a lot of space. So,
you know what? There is a ton of awesome suggestions and ideas.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone, for pitching in and helping out. I think that's wonderful.
Our community is top notch.
Yeah. So, how is it going over there with the squares?
Well, not bad. I've reached the one where this little guy, my pinwheel, is tighter than my other squares, but I'm going to muscle my way through it, pair up the edges, and then block this out a little later on. So I'm not going to worry too much about that, because I've done it before, so I know it'll work out just fine. So what I'm going to do is, as you can see, I'm putting these right sides together. My pinwheel square's a lot smaller because it's tighter than my other squares. So I know when I block that square, everything will loosen up and it'll size up perfectly to the other squares. But because I know the stitch count is right, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to go ahead and stitch it together. It'll look a little puckered at first, but then once I block it, it'll loosen up and even out, and you won't even notice it ever looked funny in the first place. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew this together. I'm going to do all my blocking when it's done. I like to do that. I like to block a blanket after it's finished, because then all the little individual pieces can kind of get smooshed around when they're already in their right position. And I feel like that just gives me a little more control over the
Nothing like a good smoosh.
Nothing like a good smoosh. My gosh, I'm all about onomatopoeias today.
I can't remember who it was, but someone suggested that the next Mr. InStitches crochet tutorial should be you explaining all of those to me.
Understanding.
Okay, so a doink is you put this yarn through here, you twist this, you tie this around. Now you've got a boink.
Doink.
And a woo means
I do. I don't know. I've always used a lot.
Here's a good question. Margaret asks, why do they call it blocking? Such a strange name.
That's a great question. I don't really know. I would think it's because what you can achieve when you finish blocking something is to literally make it look like a block. Also, original blocking, I think, is that you literally did it on a wooden block and you like had some nails and you like pulled them down into corners. You can still sort of DIY those yourselves. I don't really know. Those are my two guesses, but I've never actually looked into the terminology before.
This is really cute.
Good question.
This is from Mommy Cares. I have a 3-year-old who's so curious about crocheting. Every time I start to crochet, he always is either laying on my work or asking, how do you do that?
How do you do that?
How can I help him to learn so young?
Well,
3-year-old.
Yes.
Get a nice big hook so it's not too, not one of the skinny ones, like one that he can hold and be safe. Get used to holding it.
I would say that the first thing you might want to teach him how to do is to do some finger knitting. So no necessary equipment first, but it gets him used to looping yarn. So if you've never looked up finger knitting, there's tons of great YouTube tutorials on finger knitting for kids. And he can make something that'll end up being as wide as his little fingers. And he can wear it like a little scarf if he wants to. But more importantly, it kind of gets him used to the idea of how the yarn needs to be looped around fingers or around a particular piece of equipment.
What about the arm knitting?
Arm knitting might be
tricky?
A little too much for a munchkin.
So just start tying knots.
Yeah, just
putting little
finger knitting.
Yeah, finger knitting.
I recommend finger knitting, and then if he kind of sticks to it,
and send us pictures because I think that's adorable.
If he sticks to it, a corker would be the next thing I would give him. That was my first foray into loop stitching. A corker, it probably has different names elsewhere. It's basically just a little tube with 4 little nails or points at the cross around the top. And you weave the yarn around it, and then you pull the yarn or the loops over and over and over. It's like a tiny super miniature loom. And then all of the knit work comes out through the middle and the bottom, and that's fun. You can create a lot of different little crafty projects with your corked yarn. If he sticks to that, you can move him up to an actual crochet hook and start teaching chaining and single crocheting. That's nice and simple. If that seems a little bit too much for him, then move him into a larger loom, because looming is really friendly. It's not difficult. It's a nice big thing. He can sit there and plunk it on his lap. That's what I do.
Big heavy plastic.
Yeah, nice big heavy plastic.
Safer than
so that's what I would do. I would start with finger knitting, and if you've never done finger knitting, then that might be a fun little craft the two of you can do together.
Yeah, great idea. There's a good question here from Music Forever.
Music Forever.
Music Forever, books for life.
Yes.
There you go. Everyone, do that instead of watching news.
Yes, stay away from the news.
Listen to music you like and read books.
Mm-hmm. Sounds perfect.
So the question is, how do you find the room to block when you have a huge blanket?
You do little pieces of it at a time. So if you've ever ironed anything larger than a shirt, you know that you have to keep moving it around on the ironing board. You iron this piece, and then you move it, and you iron this piece. It's basically the same thing if you're blocking. If it's a really big thing like a blanket, then the easiest thing to do is get the whole thing damp. And I mean like spritz damp, not really like wet. And then lay it all out on some towels on the floor. It's best if you've got tile, but you can also do this outside. So you can take some out to your driveway or the sidewalk or the street or your backyard, anywhere you've got like a big chunk of space, and then you can stretch it all out, pin it into place. If you don't have that space, then it's often really good to just do it on the bed. So if you've made a blanket for the bed, cover the bed in towels or take everything off the bed so that you don't hurt your sheets or your top blanket or anything. Put towels down and drape the whole blanket. Spritz again. We're not getting it wet. We're just spritzing, and we're pulling it into place, and we're pinning it to the towels, and then we're leaving it to dry, and we are making sure that nobody goes and jumps on the bed because we don't want them to get pinned. If your blanket is looking pretty neat and tidy, and it doesn't really require a lot of blocking or serious blocking, you can get it damp. Again, sort of with the spritz, and drape it over something. So drape it over something even like the curtain rod, a wash rack if you have it. If you've got like a fence post or something, a quilt rack, anything like that's even and long, you can drape it over that. Again, on some towels or something, and then just gently pull it into place. Tug, tug, pull, pull, tug, tug, pull, pull. Try to make it as even as possible, and then leave it to dry, because the weight on something large like a blanket will often kind of help pull evenly on all of those stitches, and it'll look great. Also, on a gigantic project, blocking isn't always that important, because once you start using it, it kind of loosens up and you don't see the little wiggles. So I hope that helps.
We have a new member.
Hey, welcome.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, ding.
Big welcome to Connie.
Connie, welcome to the family.
Thanks for joining or renewing. I'm not sure. Sometimes it's a renewal, but in this case, it might be a new member. I wanted to ask you, someone had another little question here. This is from Mackenzie. My sister is blind, and I taught her how to crochet with her fingers.
Cool.
It took her a year to learn a single crochet. Do you have any ideas on how she could learn faster?
Is she using a hook or just her fingers?
We'll have to wait and see.
That, because I don't know.
How to learn faster?
How to learn faster? Really? I mean, learning is such
would a loom be a better tool?
No, not necessarily. I think learning is a very personalized thing. So if you're really motivated to learn something, it helps the speed at which you learn if you're motivated. So if she feels like it's an onerous task or it's a lot of work, she's not going to maybe want to learn as quickly.
Mackenzie says fingers.
Fingers.
Yes.
Well, practice. I mean, that's how all of us learn anything. Yeah. Practice. If you're demonstrating for her, so if you've got like her hands and you're sort of like helping her feel her way through it, then she'll learn as fast as you do. If you're learning how to crochet using your fingers and you're sort of showing her how to do it, how it feels, she'll probably learn at the same speed that you do. And she's going to base what it's supposed to feel like on what you tell her it's supposed to feel like. So this sounds like something you guys get to work on together.
That sounds really nice. You can spend that time together.
But practice
is the best thing.
Yeah, that's how you get.
And try different methods. Mm-hmm. Don't keep trying the same thing. Try with a different tool. With a loom.
Depending on her age, she might actually feel good using the hook, or because it's a tool, and it's just kind of like you can kind of feel the edge of it, and you can feel your way around that hook. So for example, if you can feel when you've hooked the yarn. You need to connect with people that have experience with this thing, older people that have experience, and then you'll get much better. Or anyone who advice. If anybody knows anyone who has a sight issues or is blind, legally blind or otherwise, who also crochets or has learned to crochet, then any kind of like helpful advice would be great, as I learned to crochet looking at what I was doing, so I'm not so sure I could
there's a lot
answer that.
There's a lot of ideas for advice in the chat. Thanks
Once
everyone
again,
for sharing. We appreciate you trying to help everyone out. I was giggling earlier because Carolyn made me laugh. She says, I think Mr. InStitches should do a class for men twice a month. Now, what kind of class are you talking about here? A crochet class?
Is this basically like...
I don't know if they'd want to make my dishcloth over and over again.
What the things to do when your wife is crocheting?
Yeah, I guess my videos could be, how to reduce yarn piles in the house, how to store the wife's yarn, how to distract the wife from yarn shopping. 5 easy ways to distract your wife from buying yarn. I'm sure we'll have some ideas popping in here.
That's funny. Okay, so I want to just show this to everybody because this looks quirky and wonky right now. So here's my nice, neat, middle-sized block, and here's my pinwheel block. So you'll notice how much smaller it is. I've gone ahead and sewn them together. I haven't bothered blocking this yet. It still looks small and kind of cranky next to this one. And there's a little bit of like puckering in the seam. It doesn't want to lay perfectly flat just because this one's a bit smaller or tighter. Really, it's not smaller, it's tighter than this one. But the stitch count was the same. They matched up. So when I get this whole thing put together and I block it, this will size up to be perfectly sized to all the other blocks. So I'm not blocking it first. I'm just stitching it together, and I'll block it later once I've got the border and everything on. Once again, so this is the right side. This is the right side. These two are sewn together. This is the right side, and I'm going to just flip it on top of the middle one. Right sides are now together, and now I'm going to sew these two together.
You're a sewing machine.
That's all I'm doing. Just sew.
Connie asks, will you be making any more goth-like projects? Like the shawl?
Possibly.
Ooh. Of course.
I do love dramatic-looking clothing.
Yes.
It's one of my favorites.
Probably not anytime soon, but
not very soon.
Absolutely in the future.
In the near future, yeah. Actually, I don't even know if we can say that. The end of the year is coming up fast.
So that we can say next year.
Yes. The short answer is yes. We will definitely.
Maybe next year.
We're not really sure. We've got a few things on the list, and it just kind of comes down to how much time we've got to put them all together. So. But I mean, Christmas is coming. Oh my gosh, I've got so many things I want to do for that.
So I am gonna, for those that are curious, I am going to post that. That's our latest video.
That's the one this morning.
We put that up this morning. If anyone's curious about the Gothic wrap, check it out.
My new favorite piece. I love super indulgent winter items. It's kind of like leaning into winter. Winter is cold, so why just make a little piddly scarf? Like literally block out the winter. I want to go outside and not even notice that I'm outside.
There's a lot of funny ideas coming in for videos here.
Everybody's awesome. I do like there's been a lot of I've been trying to make note of everybody's suggestions lately. There's been a lot of good ones. How often like the same thing kind of gets like suggested over and over, and I'm like,
Oh, thanks everyone. We're getting lots of compliments on today's Gothic wrap. Thank you.
We hope you enjoy it.
We really do. It's
a delightfully fast project.
We put a lot of time and effort into our videos, especially those ones that have like the lookbooks and.
Yeah, Mr. InStitches is busy at the computer editing for hours.
It takes many hours and many days.
Yes. late nights. All right.
It's also fun. We do enjoy it.
Yeah. You gotta like what you do. I'm really zipping
lots of
gothic
style lovers in the chat today,
I love dramatic. I mean, I love that wrap so much because it fits with so many different fashion styles. So you can obviously wear it. It depends on what color you want to do it in. That would look absolutely ethereal, all done in white. It would be the most splendid bridal wrap if you were having a winter wedding. I mean, wow, that would be just so gorgeous. And it would look so amazing in pictures. And you could even add like a little crystal drop bead or a little pearl and a crystal drop bead to the end of each one of those little cathedral windows on the edge of the, oh my gosh, like there's just so much you can do with that. So pretty. You could make it in a really super bold color. I don't know. I love it. It depends on the kind of, the reason you're making it. I love mine all in black because I do have a lot of black clothing. I love the drama of it, and I love how it looks against snow. I just love that juxtaposition of neutral colors. And yeah, you know what? If you're kind of into the goth scene, this works. If you're very, very prim and modest, this works. It's one of those things that kind of just goes with a whole variety of different styles. Oh, and if you just don't like being cold, it's amazing. This is great. I am zipping along here.
Here's another idea from Claudia. Mr. InStitches class. Hooks, crochet, and needles, knit, and other ways to impress/spoil your spouse. Okay, I see what's going on here. You left a comment and you forgot to put the troll emoji after it because that was so obviously a troll maneuver.
That is an excellent idea.
I disagree. I wholeheartedly disagree.
No, that's amazing. Are you kidding?
How to spoil your spouse with the stuff that she loves. Jayda has plenty of tools and DIY crafts and papers and stickers and stamps and you name it.
I do use them.
I think you're spoiled for what do you call those?
Claudia, I think that's an excellent idea. I think that would be.
Of course you do.
Well, no, I mean, okay, let's pull back. Let's leave the trolling for a second and look at this logically. You, having watched me for years now, might have a better idea.
1,000 years.
1,000 years, yes. You might have a better kind of idea of what I regularly reach for, what I'm always picking up, what I'm always putting down. You'll be like, you would know. You'd be like, oh, that's that hook she's always reaching for. I wonder if I should get her another one. Oh, she's always using that color, or
okay,
what I mean?
All right.
Because you know how sometimes like you're in your own head, and you don't really see it.
Keep an open mind, I guess.
You might have a good sense of the kind of thing that I like, and I might not be as aware of it.
Okay.
I don't know, just saying.
All right. I think you're just trying to get new stuff.
All right, there's the next 3. This little guy will look normal once he's been blocked out, but that's 3 more. Sweet. And then I have 2 left. These are the last 2 because December hasn't been done yet. So I'm going to go with an eye shape.
For everyone that's joining us, anyone that's joining us a little bit later, Jayda is sewing together the Patchwork Calendar Blanket square.
Yeah, let's just recap that quickly. So we've been doing the Patchwork Calendar Blanket square project this whole year. We've done 11 so far. December hasn't happened yet, so the 12th square hasn't been made. But we can certainly start sewing them all together. This is a good thing to do, especially if you're planning on giving this away as a gift. I am just sewing my squares together using the whip stitch. Very simple method, uses up the least amount of yarn because I want to make sure I've got enough for my little border. And you can stitch or sew your squares together any way you like. We do have very clear tutorials on how to whip stitch, slip stitch, or single crochet your squares together. We've got links to those tutorials. And once this live stream is finished, we're going to make sure that the description box has everything. So the links to the original videos, the link to the playlist for the entire Patchwork Square project, because if you've missed one or maybe you just want to catch up, we're going to make sure that's there too. So you can kind of like at your leisure zoom in and take a better, closer look at the sewing. You're going to pop in and say hi.
Hi, everybody. I'm hiding over there.
What do you think of his hair? I did it.
Jayda did this.
Is it even? Did I do an okay job?
Did she do a good job? Let me know.
Lockdown haircuts. Yeah, so that's what we're up to. I thought I would get these started because sometimes sewing, you know what, it's not a big deal, sewing or crocheting your blanket squares together, especially when they're nice big squares. It's not a big deal. It's just a little time consuming. And it's the kind of project that it might be nice to sort of sit down, watch a movie, have an Audible book playing in the background, hang out on a live stream. This is sort of
hang out on a live stream.
Yeah. Or get on a Skype or a Zoom call with family or something. You know what I mean? Like, this is just one of those things that shouldn't require a ton of your attention. But it's a project that you can just sort of sit and work on while you're, hanging out with some other folks or watching a bunch of Christmas movies or something. Yeah. So we figured we would get that started today because, the end of the year is coming, and thank goodness 2020 can just leave.
It can be thrown in a dumpster.
It stunk.
It can be thrown in a dumpster and lit on fire.
Yeah, 2020 has let me down.
2020 is really bummy.
I was expecting so much more.
We need some good rhymes, everyone.
Yeah,
put some rhymes in the chat. Stuff that rhymes with 2020.
Junk aplenty in 2020.
2020 stinks aplenty. It's hard to rhyme 20.
I like that. 2020 stinks aplenty. It sure does.
I've got some real good ones, but I can't say them on a family channel.
Wow.
They're crossing my mind as we speak.
I know. I bet we're all
better
doing
not
that.
say that.
We're all thinking to ourselves,
this is a family-friendly channel.
Oh, what a stinker of a year! Oh my gosh. I have to say, I've been sort of chatting about this with various people, but
everyone approves of my hair.
Yes.
So Jayda did the cut.
Thanks, guys.
Congratulate her.
I don't usually sit up until midnight for New Year's Eve. Usually I conk out before midnight, or I just kind of like, I don't know. Sometimes I watch, whatever kind of live event is going on, but I usually conk out beforehand. I feel like I owe it to myself to see the end of this year. So I am definitely going to be staying up until midnight to wave goodbye to 2020 this year.
I say we light a big fire.
We can do that. We can have a
nice
nice
big, everything on
nice
fire.
Big
everything,
fire.
the house, the neighborhood, everything just up in flames.
That's how you feel it. Just all of it.
I'm kidding, of course. Here's one from Leanne. Year 2020 wasn't funny. That's a good one.
The year 2020
I'd like to take a mulligan for 2020.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
I agree.
I blinked and missed 2020. Oh, I wish.
I blinked and missed 2020.
Tally asks, can I make a blanket without it being a calendar blanket?
Uh-huh.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you mean exactly? Because we have a lot of blanket tutorials that aren't like, a monthly.
So, okay, I'm gonna answer this in the various ways that I think that question may have been posed. One, you can make a blanket using the same square pattern. So you don't have to mix all 12. You could just use one, repeat it if you wanted. Some of these squares can just continue. So a few of these square patterns, like this one, the double frame, and also it's down there under the pile, but the log cabin, those are two blanket patterns that you could keep ever expanding with. So if you wanted to make a great big square blanket using the double frame concept or the log cabin blanket square, especially the log cabin, that one looked really cool. You can totally do that and just keep going and then just make one big blanket out of it. But yeah, you also, if you were going to use something like, say, the pinwheel or the hourglass square, you could leave the border row off and then stitch together all those squares so that there's no border interrupting. Like if you were going to make all of the hourglass squares, my hourglass square. Here it is. So if you were going to make like a whole bunch of the hourglass square, this guy here, just leave the border off of it, and then you would bind it together and you would have big diamonds. So like say blue diamonds and pink diamonds. And so that's a way you could use one of these projects too. Yeah, you can use them to make any size blanket you want too. Like you don't have to do 12 squares. You could do 16, 20. You could do just 6. 6 of these squares. So these squares are all 12 inches across, right? So this is the last 2 squares. I haven't got December's made yet, but these are the last 2 squares of the blanket. Well, that's 24 inches across. So now consider that with a little border on it. Put 6 of these together. So 2, 2, and 2 with a border. That's a mighty big baby blanket. So if you wanted to do, use 6 of the patterns or only 2 or just 1 and only put 6 of these squares together, then you could make a baby blanket. The whole point is to kind of learn some fun new project patterns, some square patterns, have them in your repertoire, and then you can pull them out whenever you want to. I like using the blanket, the calendar blanket as a way to learn stitches. Like when we did the Victorian stitch sampler, we learned 12 completely different stitch patterns that year, and we just stitched them all into a blanket. So yeah, you can totally do that and not have to make it a quote calendar blanket. I think
you answered the question.
Yes. Okay. All right. That is all of the squares sewn together.
You are a machine.
So that's my 4 rows of, 3 rows of 3 and a row of 2 because December hasn't been created yet. Once I make December, I'm going to stitch that one in. And then I'm going to open out all 3, like all 4 sets of 3 and then start sewing them together like across the, actually I can do the top 2, can't I? Yes, I can. I'll even show you what that looks like. Okay, so here's the top 3 of my blanket. 9 patch, 3 patch, and the hourglass. And then the middle 3 is the blocks and stripes, the log cabin, and the 4 patch. I'll make sure I've got the fronts that I like.
Chloe wants to know that she's giving you a massive hello.
Hi, Chloe.
Chloe was late today. Chloe, what are you doing being late?
Chloe was
You're supposed to be on time at all times.
Chloe was probably doing schoolwork.
She's probably doing her schoolwork.
Yes. Yeah. Boring. But
so we'll give her a pass,
we'll give her a pass
this time, but only this time.
All right. So now I've put all 3 together. So that's those 3 blocks and those 3 blocks. And now I'm going to stitch down the long seam. And why not? I've got these
Shell says the Victorian stitch sampler was my favorite.
Yeah, was that your
Excellent
favorite?
for learning.
I love that one.
Yeah, that was a good one.
I really, it's so fun to learn a new stitch. That was 2018.
If anyone's curious, 2018.
2018.
Calendar blanket.
That blanket is already 2 years old. Holy smokes.
Go to our website and go to the calendar blankets page.
Yes.
You'll see them all there.
We've got a temperature blanket. We've got a big fancy Tiny Squares blanket. The Victorian stitch sampler. The folk art calendar blanket. I think that might be my favorite. I have to say, I love that one. Which we have yet to hang, but it's ready to hang. And now we're doing a patchwork quilt. I just love
it. Yes, I agree with Susan. Susan says, please remember many miracles occurred in 2020. Many newborns, cancer survivors, etc.
Yep.
You are right. There's always a silver lining to everything.
That's what we're doing. We're trying to find the silver lining. Let's see. What are some of the neat things that happened this year? Oh, well, no, actually, I guess that was the tail end of last year. I was going to say, Mama got 2 kittens. She rescued 2 kittens.
Oh, my God. And they're the cutest, sweetest little cats. Oh, my goodness.
Total highlight this year. I've made a lot of projects this
Of course, we've had a lot of positive moments.
There's been a lot of, fun projects.
In general, there's just been this cloud.
Yeah.
Like this dark black cloud for everybody. But, yes, you are right. We should always look at the right side of life. Is that what it is? The right side?
Always look on the bright side of life. Do-do, 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 do-do.
There you go, everyone. Show's over. Thank you. Have a good night. Woo! Bye. That was our big finale.
We were also both bobbing our heads at the same time. So
the exact same motions.
Yes.
Like the level of cheese in this room at that was just epic.
Level of cheese.
Cheese factor.
Cheese factor.
Dorkiness. Oh, that's cute. Claudia says, Jayda, I'm an advanced amigurumi maker now, but my first one ever was your little corn.
Aww.
That's awesome.
The little corn? Oh my gosh.
The little corn on the cob? Oh my goodness, that's so cute.
Isn't making little amigurumi fun?
Yeah.
That is like...
They're very happy when they're done. It's like...
They're happy and cute. I also like that they don't take up much yarn. They're a great way to stuff with like other yarn you don't want. And they're just small. Like you don't really need a lot of space to work on them. I just love them. They got funny little personalities. I have to say, in video game news...
My favorite.
But I'm still playing Animal Crossing, and I've been busy working on my island. I've been paving little roads and stuff around. But lately, there's another one I wanted to mention. I don't know if I've mentioned it in the past, but if anybody plays using a Steam account, hang on, sorry, I'm just going through a bit of a transitory piece here.
Sweetie, you have to say it right. You have to say PC gamer elitist.
No, it's
master race. Master race.
And you call yourself a pro gamer.
I'm too old to be a pro gamer.
Yeah, you have to be like 17.
You got to be like 17. Yeah.
Steam is it's just basically a way to purchase and play video games using a computer or a laptop. If you're not in that world, if you are in that world, there's an indie game called Craft the World.
Oh my goodness.
Which I
10 out of 10
humbly recommend with a 10 out of 10, 5 stars.
This live stream is also now a review.
It's also a gaming review
for Craft the World on Steam.
Craft the World is an indie game. It's a mining and crafting game. It's got absolutely adorable you're basically controlling a bunch of little dwarfs. They're so cute. The animation style, the artwork in this game is just adorable. I absolutely love it. And you work your way through different world generators. So sometimes it's just like a plain forest world. Sometimes it's a a desert world. Sometimes it's a mountain world. It's a cave world. It's absolutely family friendly, and it's so fun, and it's extremely engaging. So if you feel like you can't get the noise out of your head, you've watched too much of the bad news, maybe you're just feeling kind of run down or a bit bummed out, it's an indie game. The Steam engine, which is a downloadable thing, is free. So you can download Steam if you have a computer or a laptop. And I do recommend it because sometimes they have free games or really cheap ones. And it's just a fun way to like play some video games.
Yeah.
Not all video games are complicated.
Games really cheap. A few dollars even sometimes.
And Craft the World is not an expensive game.
No.
It's in fact, sometimes it's on sale and you can get it for like $10. It's like, and that's Canadian.
Or less. I think its retail price without a sale is like $20.
It's like, yeah, at the max.
At the max, yeah.
They also, the developers of this game really care about it, and they're constantly giving out updates and creating downloadable content, like new versions to sort of add on to the game, which is also, in my humble opinion, a mark of a great game if the developers still love it and care about it and keep kind of, contributing to it. So if you know someone who's into gaming, has a Steam account, if you yourself like to play games, if you yourself like gentle crafter builder things, this is not an intense kind of game, but it's funny.
Tara asks, "Oh my God, is it a Harvest Moon style? You want to kind of explain roughly what it's like?"
Yeah, it's I wouldn't say it's Harvest Moon. I would say Stardew Valley is a little closer to Harvest Moon, but with more pixelated animations. Craft the World.
Okay, I would say similar, not quite similar to Terraria.
Terraria,
but much better, like much nicer looking.
Beautiful
cartoon, like
beautiful
graphics.
Cartoony graphics. Yeah, really cute.
Much more polished looking.
Yep.
But that's roughly how it is. Like you're controlling these little dwarfs.
Yeah, it's based on it's block style. Like a
little bit of Minecraft.
Yeah, it doesn't look blocky like Minecraft or a pixelated game. It's very nice animation style. But you're still dealing in terms of blocks. So, for example, if you're mining, you're mining a block, but they're not tiny pixels. They're like big blocks. So it's actually, for those of us who our eyes are getting a little older, it's a lot easier to kind of see and interact with. You can also zoom in, so you can have like a chunk that you're working in like quite big. And I discovered this later, but when you zoom in on your dwarves, they're usually complaining. So they're like they kind of like mutter into themselves and stuff. And then sometimes they'll be standing around having a bite to eat, because you have to feed them, otherwise they get really grumpy. But they'll be standing around having a bite to eat, complaining or talking to each other. And it's all nonsense noise. Like none of it's like actual words, but it is just such a great game. I have played it all the way through 4 or 5 times, and they just came out with new downloadable content, which I've downloaded. So I will be playing it through again. I have sunk, what did it tell me? I've sunk 332 hours into this game. It's the kind of thing I like to settle in with in the evening. And like I was saying earlier, if you feel like you can't block out the noise or the bad news or whatever, this is one of those games that you can just get lost in. It's peaceful, it's funny, it's fun, it's amusing. It's got a real simple little tutorial that you start with. I absolutely love it. I highly recommend it. So if you're looking for something to kind of occupy your time this weekend, I humbly recommend Craft the World.
Yes. Michelle says, I'm putting Craft the World on my wish list.
Put it on your wish list. It's so good.
Chloe, check it out also, because you'll probably like it.
Mm-hmm. Family friendly.
It's family friendly. It's very funny. Yes. It's actually adorable.
It's adorable. Yeah,
it's a good mix of all of those kind of currently popular games.
Yeah, crafting,
but
mining
because
games.
It's like an indie game, it's kind of like, it's just not well known.
Yeah, it's not.
But it is so good.
I think you kind of stumbled across it, and you were like, you kind of looked at it.
Yeah, I was like, I think
you saw the animation style, and you were like, I think you might like this. And it was sort of like, okay, and it was cheap, so why not?
And then they came out with the multiplayer, so you can also play with friends.
That's right. There's multiplayer, and it's amazing. We play together all the time.
Jayda kicks my butt.
You can play cooperatively multiplayer, or you can play against each other, which I really like. Both. I like them. I like cooperative stuff too.
Super sticker.
Super sticker. Ding ding. Thanks, guys.
We have the Lemon Man blowing you a kiss and a heart. And this is from Every Color Kel.
Every Color Kel. Hi, Kel. Happy Friday.
Hi, Kel. Welcome. Welcome to our humble show.
Welcome to our humble abode. our humble little crochet circle, where we're stitching together our squares today. I'm very happy to get this
Nicole
done.
wants a hint on the 2021 blankets.
Oh, no hints.
Absolutely not.
Nope, you got to stick around.
No hints whatsoever.
Come see us in January.
You'll have to pop in January.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I love these. I love these. I just love them. They're so fun. So yeah, that's what
we got a lot of requests for hints. Nope, no hints.
No hints. Sorry, guys.
Zero.
Nope.
Nothing.
We love surprises around here.
No hints at all.
Excuse me.
Boy, I wanted to just say something, and then I was like, wait a sec, that's going to be a hint. So nope, nothing. I'm going to keep my mouth zipped. I have squares to put together, but I'm reluctant because they're not all the same size. So what would you recommend?
I will say that 2 things. If all of your squares are the same stitch count, so for example, these ones all have 36 stitches along each side and then 2 chains in the corner. So if all of your squares are the same stitch count, then go ahead and stitch them together. They might look a little wonky at first, but then once you get the whole thing stitched together, you can block it. Those stitches will even out. Quite often, differences in size in our squares is only due to tension or possibly like the stitch pattern we were using. So don't overthink it. If your squares are all the same stitch count, then just stitch them together and then block it and it'll be fine. If your squares are all different stitch counts, and that is why they're all different sizes, and you want to stitch them all together, then you kind of have to lay them out and do some thinking. So for example, in this case, I might block the squares first before you stitch them together. This way you can put them into their final size. You know exactly how big they really are, and then you can line them all up. So if you've got one that's say 36 stitches across the side, and then you have 2 that are each 18 inches or 18 stitches across the side, then see how they fit. Do they both fit within the same sort of like the same parameters as the bigger one? Do they overlap a little bit? Can you put together a whole row of smaller squares and then maybe a row of 2 or 3 of the bigger squares and then them all together, even out at the sides? If they're off by just a little, then don't worry about it because you can add a border and it'll make all of those sort of funny little bits and piece differences disappear. So I would say don't be afraid. Figure out what your issue is. Is it stitch count or is it just sizing? If it's just sizing, that's an absolute nothing burger. You can just, block them first or just stitch them together. If they're different stitch counts, then you are probably going to want to block them all first and then lay them all out and see how they go together. And then you want to put them together in a way that groups of smaller squares will fit into the parameters of larger squares. And that's the easiest way to do it. And that's a cool look. So.
Okay, don't feel pressure.
No.
But I want to read this out anyway.
Okay.
This is from Aisha. Can you at least tell us what kind of yarn you will need for next year's blanket pattern?
I can.
Okay, as long as you don't give anything away.
No, I won't give anything away.
Just in case people want to order and have it ready, maybe.
So I will probably.
Okay, that's enough. You've given away enough already. That's it. That's your hint.
All of our blankets so far have been made using a medium size 4, in my case, acrylic yarn. So you can count on using a medium size 4 yarn. You can make it in acrylic if that's what you have access to. If you have access to more cotton or you prefer cotton, you can use cotton. If you want to go crazy and use like a wool blend or something, you're more than welcome to do that. But size 4, medium weight is the weight category, the size of the yarn that we're going to be using. And I'm not going to talk about colors because usually colors are kind of a personal thing anyway, but that would also be giving away a lot. So
okay, we have an answer from Every Color Cal.
Oh, yeah.
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
The 2021 calendar blanket will include yarn and a crochet hook. That's your hint, everyone.
That sounds pretty good. Cal knows what's going on.
Yes.
Yes.
Maybe we'll surprise everyone and do the tutorials in reverse. There's a hint.
That just made my brain fold in half.
Mine too, but you know what's going to happen now. We're going to reverse the videos.
Typically, I use a size 4 medium weight yarn because it's the easiest for me to get, and from what I understand, for most people to kind of get their hands on. But if DK weight is the yarn that is most prevalent around you, you can use DK weight, and we will hopefully have sizing or size up or sizing won't matter explanations for you at that time.
To be honest with everyone, it's actually difficult to give full hints because it actually takes us a really long time to plan these calendar blankets because we have to plan through an entire year how it's going to go. So even if we gave you a hint, it might change come January.
Even if we just gave you the theme, you might really not be able to infer much from
So
that.
even with a hint, it's not really going to help until we finalize it and then say, okay, we're ready.
But we will probably do a video or a live stream in the new year, sort of detailing some general things, like the kind of hook you're going to want to use, the kind of yarn you're going to want to use.
We'll do that, yeah.
We did that last year because last year with the folk art calendar blanket, it really required like the whole blanket was made before we added pieces to it. This year, this was all about stash busting. And frankly, again, we didn't know what was going to happen this year, but I'm kind of glad we went with a stash busting blanket because I have not been into a store to buy yarn since last year. I've bought a little off of Amazon, but like 2 or 3 balls,
here and there.
2 balls of crochet thread. That's it. That's all I've bought this year.
I know. I'm doing a real good job this year. My distracting skills are increasing. Maybe I should do some tutorials for the men.
You've been distracting me with excellent video games.
This is how you distract your wife from the yarn aisle. Wear a costume and everything. First thing you do is put on a clown outfit.
Point out her favorite foods on sale.
And then you drive her to the store. One good trick is to let her out at the wrong store first. And then pretend like you made a mistake. Oh, I've got all kinds of ideas. I can see all the husbands showing up. Like,
they're all paying
ears
attention. Are perking up.
Okay. I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but Katrina's Crochet World sent us a super chat.
Thank you, Katrina.
Thank you.
No, I have not thanked Katrina.
Okay.
What is up with Katrina?
Yeah, how's Katrina doing? And how's the Crochet World?
Yes, Katrina's Crochet World in particular. How is that?
How's that doing? Chat's moving along pretty quick, so I probably missed a bunch of stuff. Just repeat. If you had a question, just repeat it. I'll try to catch it.
Okay, I want to point out a couple things. So here I've got...
Summer would like to see another ugly sweater build.
Oh,
wow, that's going back, Summer.
Summer, that's a great idea.
That's going way back. 2020
needs the ugliest Christmas sweater ever.
Like it should induce, the odd
gag
reflex. It has to be that bad.
I think it's a great idea. I think Summer's onto something. Yeah, we need an ugly Christmas sweater.
Yeah, we do.
We do.
And it should have 2020 just.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Across the front
it should. I think we'll do that. I'm going to start planning one. Oh, and just for the record, if you want to do an ugly Christmas sweater along with us, just grab a sweater you don't care too much about anymore, and we'll build on that. That's the easiest and most fun way to make an ugly Christmas sweater.
Yes.
Or if your thrift stores are open and available, you can pop in and buy a secondhand sweater that you don't care about messing with.
That'd be fun to do live.
Just make sure you wash it. Yeah, like we did the last time.
Yeah.
Oh, let's do that. That sounds fun.
Ugly sweater.
Ugly sweater build.
2020.
Okay, so just quickly, here's the first two rows. Of the patchwork quilt put together, but this is what I wanted to point out. If you were doing 6 together and adding a border, look how big this is. This is 24 by 36 inches without a border already. So if you added the border, it would be even bigger. Great baby blanket size. So there you go. That's pretty large, and that's the first 2 rows put together.
Okay, so Jana says for us in South Africa, can we have a t-shirt version?
Yes! Absolutely. I love
Maybe
that.
we'll design it so that it can be applied to either a sweater or a t-shirt for the people in the warm climate.
I might just make both.
Yeah, you want to do both? Yeah, okay. Great.
that? No, you got to have something stupid.
Well, we do have a lot of viewers in South Africa and Australia,
New Zealand,
and,
yeah. Summer's on the beach,
like Singapore, like warm.
Christmas
it's always warm in
beach.
Those areas.
Yeah, it's
lucky. Hawaii.
Lovely. All right. I think that's a great idea, and I'm excited about that. I'm going to. All right. So third layer is going on. All right. So. Right sides together. Now I'm going to do this line. I'm going to turn it around. And here I go. Making great headway here. You guys are such great company.
Thanks for hanging out, everyone.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us.
Thanks for participating in the chat, answering questions. Love it.
Kicking off our weekend. I'm just so excited to get all this done.
There's a lot of great ideas for the phrase that should be on the sweater.
Oh, this is great.
I can't repeat them.
This is great. Oh my gosh. Oh, this is gonna be fun. Oh my gosh. I've got so many ideas now exploding.
Oh, there's a lot of good ones here.
Okay, if you are going to use like a sweater, like this is just like an old sweater that you've got lying around, and you want to write something on it in yarn, it is so easy to chain stitch through the fabric. We have a video on how to do chain stitch lettering, because it was how we signed our 2016 temperature blanket. I don't think I've got that blanket handy here. Otherwise, I'd show you. But we have a video on that, and you can use that method to write something across your sweater. So you could even chain stitch the sentence into your sweater if you wanted to. And the great thing about an ugly Christmas sweater or T-shirt is that it's ugly. You got to make it ugly. So even if your writing doesn't look right, it's like it works. I love it.
Ugly. I want it to sing too. I want the sweater to sing when you press a button.
We can do that
with a really terrible voice.
You can get those things. Where
I know you can record your own whatever.
Oh, this is gonna be.
This is gonna be epic. Only we can get into the stores to buy stuff.
I don't need it. I don't.
Well, there's Amazon.
Yeah, if you can order it online, order it online. Just stay home.
Let me see. I was looking for the link to our homepage for Music Forever. Was asking about tutorials we have on crochet thread.
Oh yeah.
So we have quite a few actually.
Quite a few.
Most of them say what to do with crochet thread, I believe, but they don't all say that. Some of them are jewelry.
These buttons. These are plain wooden buttons. I had ordered a natural color. We got sent these kind of strange reddish looking ones. Anyway, I am busy covering them all with crochet thread.
Oh yeah, the buttons. So, that's another one.
I love the way these feel, and these look really nice. You can take cheap. We've got a couple tutorials on that if you want to just work on something small with thread. Cover up your crappy old buttons, or if you've got buttons that are the same size but don't match, like color-wise or pattern-wise, you can cover them with some simple thread stitches, nothing fancy. And then that kind of makes them all match. And then these just make absolutely fabulous little bits of decor for hats or, back of your fingerless gloves or your mittens, ends of scarves. You can use them on sweaters, cardigans, whatever. I love doing this. This is one of my favorite ways to use that crochet thread. And that's what I was kind of standing around doing yesterday. But yeah, we do have quite a number of videos on using crochet thread. Making jewelry using it too, like we got a bracelet, we got an anklet.
Yeah, that's right.
We did a live stream on
I think they're all under. I think we have a playlist called "What to Do with Crochet Thread."
Yes.
Or crochet thread projects or lace making. Yeah. So if you go to our channel homepage, go to the playlists tab across the top, and just scroll through the playlist, you'll see crochet thread there. You can also search Jayda InStitches crochet thread pattern, and most of them should pop up, I think. The playlists are the best way to find stuff.
Yes, the playlists are great because we try to group like tutorials. We've got so many at this point that it makes a lot more sense to have them kind of all grouped in the
birthday. We got birthday coming up. Happy birthday, whoever that was.
Happy birthday! Everybody had a birthday.
The chat's moving along. Sometimes our computer or our internet sort of loads it all at once, and it goes like it just kind of flies by in a couple of pages worth. It's a nice afternoon we're having.
Guys, this is the best. This is I couldn't have hoped for a nicer, calmer, more enjoyable afternoon.
My only error was making
not
enough coffee. I'm working on ginger ale right now.
Oh, are you? I was just finished my water, but I think I'm good. I don't think I want any more coffee today.
Oh no, you're satisfied.
I might have a nice little cup of chamomile tea later.
Oh, well, la-di-da.
Go for it. It's cooling down, so if I go for a walk later, I'm going to want a nice hot drink. This is it's also kind of neat sewing together all of the squares. Like if we make a calendar blanket that's all in pieces, like our blanket square blankets. At the end of the year, I sort of find myself sewing them all together, and it's kind of like I'm looking at each one and I'm remembering having made it. I'm remembering the temperature outside when I made it. And it's kind of bittersweet. It's like I'm excited that the blanket is coming together and that it's like the project is sort of getting completed, but then it's also kind of sad because it's another year coming to an end. But then again, it's 2020, so I'm kind of glad that this year's coming to an end. A patchwork calendar blanket. That's exactly how this whole year has felt. A bit patchy.
Yeah, that's fitting.
Yeah, patchy.
And here we were thinking it was going to be the roaring 20s all over again.
It will be.
Instead, it was the opposite.
Darn it all. We have a whole 10 years to make it roar. So we will
could do the roaring 30s.
We will know. The 20s are.
We're still in the 20s. You're
20s
right.
are going to be fine.
Yeah, we have
it's going to be fine. I mean, look at this group of people. We're going to be fine. We're creative. We're funny. We're goofy. We've got Mr. InStitches to troll. We're going to be fine.
That's right. I'll just take all the punches. I'll be the punching bag. Me, Lula, and Gwen.
Aww.
And the squirrel.
And the
the squirrel gets a pass.
No, the squirrel gets a pass.
The troll. He can be a little punching bag for everybody. Thanks everyone for chatting along and hanging out.
Yeah, I'm really glad. It's just, you know what? Sometimes
I'm constantly giggling at everyone's comments.
It's because everybody's so funny.
Making me laugh.
It's sometimes just really nice to be able to just.
And Shell, feel free to dial the trolling down. I think Shell loves the little troll emoji way too much.
He's so cute. He's even got furry ears.
He's like her favorite.
Or hairy ears.
I might have to send you a signed troll emoji, Shell.
That would be one tiny signature.
Well, obviously, we would print them in a larger size. Shell would like that.
This is, you know what? There's also something about, I mean, this is why we probably like crochet. One of the reasons we like crochet, there's this beautiful repetition in whip stitching, single crocheting, slip stitching, putting together a seam. I just find the gentle repetition of this regular even stitch. It just feels very calming on my brain. I just love it. Stitching time.
Stitching time. There I go again.
Can't help singing.
Looks very warm in here.
You're thinking jumping time.
That's what I'm thinking.
Mary Poppins.
No, it's stepping time.
Stepping time.
Stepping time.
Stepping time. Never need a reason. Never need a rhyme. Stepping time. Oh my gosh, that's what
It's stitching time. It's always stitching time.
It's always stitching time. It is literally always stitching time.
I love whip stitching. It's so calming, says Kelly.
Yes, totally agree. I love it. It's simple, it's even, it's calming. I love it.
Christine says, when will you guys have your next Granny Square game? Mr. InStitches needs a pool noodle that looks like a troll.
He does.
We should make a stuffed toy version of the little troll. The little troll I drew.
Oh. Actually, you know what?
You could easily put that together.
I could.
And then I'll throw it at you when you cheat.
In that case, I'm not making one.
Or I'll duct tape them to the end of the pool.
Oh, that would be funny.
And I'll have a little bit of weight to it, and it might actually stop you.
You know what? I'm just sitting here thinking, I've got all the squares I need to put together to make that poncho that I wanted to do. So I was thinking we could do some kind of crazy lightning round with the game where I'm trying to stitch them all together. And we'll base the game on stitching them together, and we'll amend some of the Wheel of Chaos directions for joining them.
Sure.
Because I want to get this started.
Okay.
And then I want to crochet some border and stuff around it, which will be the same thing. So we'll amend the game.
All right. I'll ask Lula. She's okay with changing her Wheel of Chaos,
but
she might say no.
We will definitely be playing again, hopefully soon, provided our internet hangs out all right. And
so to answer the question, yes. We are absolutely going to play again.
Short answer is yes.
We are absolutely going to play another round of the game.
Mm-hmm. I love that game. It is so fun. Another reason that I really enjoy these live streams is that I kind of picture everybody sitting in their favorite chair or sitting in their little like favorite place, their little nook, maybe even at their desk at work, and just kind of like there's company. Like I feel like, you know, we've all just got a little bit of company. It's nice, sweet company, and we're all kind of just having a goofy time and doing something we enjoy.
Carolyn says, "How about an amigurumi troll?"
An amigurumi troll.
So an amigurumi version of the little troll I drew.
Yes.
The little emoji there. I think that's actually a pretty good idea. I think that'd be cute.
I could totally do that.
Yeah.
To put my thinking cap on.
I'm gonna have to do some get the creative juices.
Like I haven't got enough projects that I want to start already.
Yeah. You should see our suggested list.
I finally had to amalgamate it into an Excel spreadsheet, and so I can sort it by like season and theme and object and purpose. And it's just because there's just so many great ideas. We couldn't keep it all in the main list anymore. Not to mention all the stuff that we just want to do. Oh my gosh, I almost planned this out.
Claudia would like an amigurumi troll holding the pool noodle.
He is holding.
He's actually holding the pool noodle. It's hard to tell. I didn't make the pool noodle dark enough, but if you look very closely, or you can enlarge it, you can see he's holding the pool noodle. Aaron says, how are we putting this together already? The last video I saw was square 2. Whoa, square 2?
I know. How
that's
is it?
Like,
that's
February.
Wow.
My goodness. Well, busy lives.
You know what?
We're all busy.
It's just been
I know
that kind of
Aaron
a year.
says, oh my goodness, it's been a year.
Yeah.
And that's true.
What a year it's been.
What a year. You know what? This always happens to us when we do these month-to-month projects. We're always kind of looking at each other going, oh my goodness, we're already halfway through the year. And then it's what? The year's ending?
Yeah.
And then we have to cram it in at the end so that everyone has time. A lot of these projects get made as Christmas gifts, so we try our best to put out borders and joining things ahead of time.
Yeah, we want to try and get them all done early in December.
What are we? We've got one square to go.
We've got one square to go.
Yeah.
And then we're joining right now. And like we said, you can join it any way you want. And then there's going to be a border tutorial. And we're going to try and have that all done very early in December. There's the first 3 rows.
Oh, wow. That looks great. Nice.
Maybe I should back up a little bit.
Yeah, do you want me to help you hold the other side?
No,
and then
okay.
Oh, you've got a square there. Okay,
yeah.
That's actually perfect. Come this way a little bit. Nope, the other way. I'm seeing it mirrored. Slow down, go the other way. Okay, stop. Perfect. Yay, it looks awesome. Hold that still for a couple seconds.
Uh-huh. Are you going to try and take a picture?
I'm going to see how long you can hold it up.
Oh, that's very funny. You're trolling me now.
Ha!
All right. There you go.
I gotta get you back.
That's the first.
Picture perfect, says Christine. Pretty, gorgeous.
Thanks,
it's
guys.
Beautiful.
And then once we've got the December square done, I'll finish that little row. I'll sew that on, and then it'll be border time.
And share your pictures with us if you guys are doing the same.
Yes.
Instagram, Etsy, Twitter. But Etsy is where we are most often.
We're there the most often, and then Instagram and Twitter in that order.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Wow, that was actually pretty quick, and you were chatting along.
Yeah. Well, good company, right?
Yeah, this was wonderful.
Guys, thank you so much for hanging out. I hope that maybe if you were working along with me, you got some done. We will make sure that all of those links that we talked about earlier, so the how to join your crochet squares together videos are in the description box. We'll make sure the playlist for this year's calendar blanket square, all the patterns up to from January to November, that playlist will also be in the description box. And our Gothic wrap tutorial, that was that was our Friday tutorial that went up this morning. We'll make sure that link's there too in case you missed it. And everybody have a safe and crafty weekend. And we'll see you very soon. Very, very soon, I would think. Because the weeks go by so darn quick. Yeah.
All right, we're wrapping it up.
We're wrapping it up. I can't believe I got all that put together. I'm very pleased. So.
All right, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us. Take care. We'll stay safe and stay crafty and stay healthy. And we will definitely see you soon. Very soon.
Bye.
Have a great Friday night.